mean, if she's a 1, right? Like, let's be honest, boys. If she's a 1, like, I feel like it's a lie of omission if you're not like, hey, dog, you doing all right? Like, you know, I mean, like,
that's not my
it's
business.
like, I mean, regardless, it's my boy. It's my business. All right. If my boy's walking around with fucking Quasimodo, like, I got questions, you know?
Well, no.
Well, but if she's like a 4, you know what I mean? But if she's a 4, you know what I mean? Like, it's whatever, you know what I mean? But like, but you know what I mean? Like,
where you would. So there's a
line where it would be so egregious where, like, if I'm like constantly thinking about it, right? And it's just like in my fucking mind. Like if I'm like if I have them over, right? And I'm, you know, making guacamole, and as I'm, you know, like mortal and pestilent it out, right? I like look over and I'm just like, oh, right? And I'm like, and I'm back at it, you know? Like, you know what I mean? Like if I don't say anything, that's a lie of omission. But if she's just, you know, plain Jane, like sound good for him, dog.
Again, I'm a little bit on the fence in terms of explicitly deplatforming. I tend to lean towards some effectiveness, but to maybe use maybe a more concrete example, and maybe we'll find out in whatever the next presidential election, 2024, of like, you know, a lot of whatever online forums dedicated to Donald Trump like have been pretty much like taken online or driven like more underground. I'm curious, like, how much like the Trump movement has grown or not grown, or like has since grown since 2020. I hope to find out that it has worked, and that Trump, if he chooses to run, will be ineffective in 2024. But that, I guess, remains to be seen.
Oh, did you really just say that? Did you really just say, like, yeah, there's problems with echo chambers and possible radicalization, but hopefully we can swing elections in our favor by deplatforming people, and that won't cause like issues or.
I don't think I said that.
Yo.
Good evening.
Hey, I'm live, by the way. You probably all know that.
That was all. Just tuning in.
Oh, what an interesting conversation. So, what do you think, Corey? If your buddy asks you, like,
buddy,
whoever your buddy is, your friend, asks
is he your good buddy?
You think, yeah, you're a good buddy, a good friend.
My good buddy Scott.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not your goddamn good buddy, Corey.
Ask you what you think of their new significant other, their new girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it may be. If you find them ugly, do you think it's okay to just say they're ugly?
Well,
or do you lie?
No, I think there's like, this is such a, in my mind, a really low-level conversation of like, why is my buddy asking me whether I find their girlfriend or significant other attractive? Like,
when
I'm not looking to date them.
Sure, but when they come up and they bring their significant other for the first time around you, it's very common to ask, so what do you think of her?
Yeah, so I have no problem, like, I operate on the principle of, like, honesty, like, at all times, and I have no problem saying, like, I think people make, like, this false equivalency of, like, well, you can't be honest and kind at the same time. You totally can be honest and kind at the same time. You can simply say, like, I personally don't find them attractive, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
Truth is compassion. You can't be compassionate and lie to people because you deny their ability to make rational decisions when you lie to them.
I agree with you, Scott.
But if he goes, what do you think of my girl? You don't have to respond with like, dog, she's got a busted ass face. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can be polite.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, what's up, Prem?
Hey,
you're on
right.
stage.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so, I mean, be honest. Don't lie, right? Like, I would say not only is it immoral to do so, but it's also unhelpful. But I mean, you don't have to be a dick about it.
Sure. I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's just most people's inability to be tactful and to be not only, like, I guess, creative. And like, honesty is totally compatible with, as Scott said, compassion and kindness.
Well, that was the conversation I just had. We had a gentleman who insisted that if he finds the significant others of his bros unattractive, he makes it a point to tell them that this as a thing. Make sure that they know that he thinks that are ugly.
I
We
see
were
no
just
reason-
discussing the.
I see no reason to say that unprompted. I would never go to anybody in my life saying, "Hey, by the way, your significant other's unattractive."
Well,
Like,
he
it's
just
none of my
wants to make
business.
sure that they don't fall into traps, right? That's his.
The
This is
unattractive
his
trap?
reasoning. This is his reasoning. I'm not trying to steal man.
How's that a
right
trap?
now.
That's the exact opposite. The trap would be if she's like super hot and you're like, nah, dog, like she's kind of psycho. Have you really been objectively looking at some of her Facebook and Instagram posts? Like, first of all, why does she even have a Facebook at this point? She's 25 years old. Like, come on, dude, something's not right. You know what I mean? Like, it's the opposite. If she's ugly, like, your boy's not being trapped. Your boy's in love. You know what I mean? Like, your boy really likes this girl because she's a good girl.
Well,
So wait a minute, hold on. Wick, I'm coming into this.
Sure.
So, okay, you were talking to an individual. First of all, what happened to your hair? He's the guy who stole your hair? Is this what this guy did?
No. I
It's
needed to do some grooming, right? I was going to go out in public for a barbecue.
By the way,
for
Wick,
the
you're
first time
looking
in a while.
very attractive.
Thank you.
You're looking very cold.
con-
I
Conversation-
thought you just said you weren't going to lie to the man.
Oh boy.
And that's
But
how
yeah.
he knows that.
So the conversation was about honesty and when it's okay to lie to people, right? And so the question came up, like, if you have a negative opinion of someone, right, or a part of someone, do you necessarily, in order to be honest with them, have to let them know that you're being honest? And the dividing line for me is, does this thing matter? And if it does, then yes, I think you should be honest. Like, so for example, if someone asked me, what do you think of this rap I just made? I would rather them hear it sucks from me, their friend, than to go out into the public with their stupid ass lyrics and just get pounded by the public, right? I would want them to know from me first. Now, but one of the individuals in the conversation was insistent that if he finds the significant others of his friends unattractive, he has to let them know right away that they find them unattractive, because otherwise he's lying to them.
Well, I mean,
lying.
Yeah,
go ahead,
was
Brad.
no. Yeah, I was gonna say what you were about to say. Like, I don't see how it's lying. I don't comment on the attractiveness of my friends' partners. You know, like, hey.
I mean, if she's a 1, right? Like, let's be honest, boys. If she's a 1, like, I feel like it's a lie of omission if you're not like, hey, dog, you doing all right? Like, you know, I mean, like,
that's not my
it's like,
business. Like,
I mean, regardless, it's my boy. It's my business. All right. If my boy's walking around with fucking Quasimodo, like, I got questions, you know?
Well, no.
But if she's like a 4,
you
know what I mean? But if she's a 4, you know what I mean? Like, it's whatever, you know what I mean? But like,
So
you know what I
there's a
mean?
line
Like,
where you would. So there's a
there's a line where it would be so egregious where, like, if I'm like constantly thinking about it, right? And it's just like in my fucking mind. Like, if I'm like if I have them over, right? And I'm, you know, making guacamole, and as I'm, you know, like mortal and pestilent it out, right? I like look over and I'm just like, ooh, right? And I'm like, and I'm back at it, you know? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I don't say anything, that's a lie of omission. But if she's just, you know, plain Jane, like, sound good for him, dog. Like, at the end of the day, right? If she's got some meat on her ass, you can take her into the bedroom and you can cut the lights down low, and you're going to have a good time if you're not gay, right? Like, it's going to be a good day, right? Like, she doesn't need to look like a fucking model. But if she looks like she smells from a distance, you know what I mean? Like, I might need to say something to my boy. Like, hey man, what's going on? Have you been taking your antidepressants lately? I know you read that recent study that says that they don't like improve quality of life, you know, but like,
okay.
I don't know that you should immediately go off of the antidepressants.
I think this is
you know?
super interesting, Scott, because now you got me thinking. Like, my initial answer was going to be absolutely not, right?
I would ask
But
first, are they happy? I would ask my friend, are you happy? If they are, then I don't, like, what the hell do I care?
That's kind of like a dog whistle, though. When you ask
but you're
your dog,
asking. You're like, yo, you happy, dog?
you're
Is
asking.
shit good?
Yeah. At that point, you're already asking because you've already met Scott's.
Well, no, as in, like, if they ask me the question, like, hey, is my girlfriend Quasimodo? I'd be like, are you happy? What the hell do I care? Like,
Okay. But like,
Yes.
Okay.
Are you happy?
So-
That's the appropriate response.
All right. So there's this YouTube channel. And I've mentioned this on my channel before. It's called Truly, Truly, They do lots of things, right? But they also have like a Shake My Beauty segment, and it shows people who have like disfigurements or like birth defects, you know, like pretty severe shit, you know, and who are trying to put themselves out there, like even though this thing is different about me, like I am still worth it, you know, the human, all that, right? So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like how bad things can be, right? And like, and because of that channel, truly, I've seen how bad. If you look down their plate, you can see how bad things can truly be. And so, if a friend of mine approached me with, you know, a woman that had one of these afflictions, what would I say? Fuck. Okay,
Like, would you ask her, like, if they were like missing a leg? Like, are you okay, dog? You're dating someone
Missing-
that only has one
missing a leg
Like,
is not. No.
Well,
Missing a
No,
leg
dog.
is not.
Paul McCartney dated a girl that was missing a leg. She was hot, all
Oh,
right?
well,
like, that's
well,
not
I'm
enough
just
information to
saying,
go off
like,
of,
well,
you
yeah,
know?
So, like, what about some like severe vitiligo? Like, at that point, you're gonna be like, hey, what's the matter with you? Like,
Yes.
well, so we're obviously different people.
Right. I'm
Well,
just
I
gonna
think
I'm just
that
gonna be honest.
at
Like
a
if it's
certain
like if it's
point-
at the forefront of my head at a certain point,
Yeah.
you're being like there's like there's gonna be
just
like
have
an uncomfortable like air in the room.
An elephant
right?
in the room.
Because
You
you're
have to air
because you're
things out.
not saying something that you're clearly thinking, right? And
No,
like you don't gotta do it in
that's a
front of her.
reflection on you of like if I'm judging my
Shut the
my-
fuck up.
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely. it is.
lie.
That just
Don't
shows
lie. If
how-
your boy
I'm
came over
absolutely not.
and didn't warn you, and girl had like a severe disfigurement and like a cleft palate, and like was like and like you'd be like,
Well, okay,
dog, you
is
could
that
have told
impression
me
of someone
first.
That's cognitively there. Like, I need to clarify. Is that that impression that you just did? That speech?
Nah, she's
impediment?
just got a fucked
Well,
up
no.
mouth, man. Like
Okay,
she's perfectly
okay.
cognitively there, you know.
Corey, let me ask you this: if it wasn't a physical appearance thing, but it was obvious that this person had some sort of mental impairment, right? That they had
It's a
some
valid
sort
question.
of issue.
So,
Would you bring it up?
so I would ask the question in terms of like power dynamics and consent and how consensual is this relationship. I have no
That's the
problem.
most
This is
leftist
the
shit I've ever heard
worst.
in my whole life.
Power
Why is that? Why is that?
I mean, like I get what you're
there's-
saying. You're not
like,
wrong,
clearly-
right? You know what I mean? You don't want your boy to
there's
catch a
clearly
charge,
limit.
but like, look, I mean, like, here's the deal, right? My mother has like a severe birthmark on like a majority of her face. And so because of that, for whatever reason growing up, I don't really see vitiligo and birthmarks. Like I actually like don't notice it the way that
Like,
other
you see
people.
race.
No, I'm just being honest. Like I just don't, I don't notice
a
it the
full
same
body
way.
Yeah, exactly. If the
I'm
full
actually
body
like-
vitiligo,
full
he
bo-
doesn't see.
No, like I mean, like obviously I see it, but what I'm saying is that like my brain is used to ignoring it in a way that other people aren't, right? Like I actually dated a girl that had like like quite a few birthmarks, right? And people were like, "Ew, she's so ugly," and I was just like, "Oh, I don't really notice it," right? But yeah, it would be weird if, but I also know that I've brought friends over to see my mom and forgotten to like tell them, right? And then they'd be like, and then they like meet her and everything's cool. And then they would like go in my bedroom and then they would be like, dog, like you could have fucking told me. And I'd be like, oh shit, I forgot. You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, like, obviously, like people, it's not like these people are unlovable or anything. The question is just if you see something so shocking, it's so egregious, you're gonna have questions. And it's gonna be weird if they don't bring it up or you don't bring it up and you just try and pretend like this obvious disparity that's occurring is like not in the room because you're afraid to offend.
No,
Before we go any farther, I want to like bring Doobie up to speed on this conversation. So
I'm
Doobie,
sure I'll have the
this-
best take.
This is, yeah, he does. Yeah, my friend Doobie will have the best take. I'm sure of it. Doobie,
We just talked about being honest, Prime, and you're gonna lie to him like that? What?
Our friend Wick here was having a conversation. You there, Doobie?
Yeah,
Look, that was
Okay,
my joke,
so,
but
like-
worse.
he was having a conversation with someone on his stream, and it was about honesty. And then he said that if his friends came through with a significant other which was ugly enough that he found unattractive, he would definitely let them know, right? Like, or else he feels like he'd be lying to them. And then that's how we like, moved here. So Doobie, just quickly, what say you to that? Like, if your friend came through with, let's not say disfigured, right? Let's move away from that for a second. Just a person who is like, nominal, but just for whatever reason, extremely unattractive. Would you say anything to your boy?
Not disfigured. She looks like she smells from a distance. Like before you can actually smell her, you're like, I bet that girl smells bad.
Well, then there's like a hygiene issue potentially. Like that's
No,
different.
Corey,
he's not
no,
saying that
some
he
people-
I'm memeing.
Some people
I know.
look like they smell even if they've just gotten out of the shower. Like they
Yes.
just look like they stink. Like it's just true. So I guess it would depend, right? So if it were just that I found her unattractive for like whatever reasons, no. But if there was something like truly off-putting about this person, I'd probably mention it to him, like,
Give
hey,
me an example.
what's going on with this? Like, well, let's say it's the looks like she smells thing. Like she just looks dirty, right? Her hair's all fucked up, looks all oily and shit. I might pull him aside and say, hey, is she okay? Like, what's going on? Something like that. Like, I'm not gonna like, hey, your girlfriend's fucking ugly. That'd be pretty rude. But yeah, I'd probably mention it to him just to make sure that, like, that there isn't some condition I should be aware of.
My chat has a sage, as something I think is really valuable to add here. And she says, one time my friend told me that my Christmas turkey was drier than Gandhi's flip-flop. Best thing that ever happened to my cooking.
Yeah, so there's this, I don't know if it's an old saying, but it's something that I've heard before.
That is just like a
No, that's true.
a pretty like silly
That's
example.
true.
Because
No, it's not.
I'm presumably eating the meal. I'm not dating this other person's partner.
Unless
Jesus-
that's double
Jesus
entendre
Christ.
for her pussy,
Yeah.
then this is not the same thing. What the fuck?
No, okay, hold on. What if you can smell her pussy when she's walking around? Just like one of those.
Well, then there's a potential
then-
hygiene issue. That's
Yo,
Okay,
I'm
well,
worried my boy's
and
gonna
hold
get a
on,
yeast
and you're
infection.
okay-
You know what I mean?
And you're okay with talking
fine.
to your Corey? You're okay with talking to your friend about the smell of his girlfriend's cooch? Well, like that's something.
Well,
you-
first of all, how would I know where
Like,
the smell
hey,
is emanating
is
from
that shit
unless
clean
it's,
enough? Like,
very
let's-
distinct?
you don't. Okay, if you don't know what that
yeast
smells like, you just haven't
No,
been around enough women. Like, I'm sorry.
not those women.
Yeah.
I have no problem admitting
Oh.
that. But
No,
it's that-
sometimes even like really attractive women have bad days. Okay, like it happens.
Yeah, it's
Sure. I'm
thing
not-
happens. Unfortunately.
Yes, but it depends on there's totally very many contextual factors to take into account. Like you're all just like on this one on this one dimensional of like they just look a certain way, and it matters whether I'm asked or whether I'm not. There's totally a way to handle things with social grace. It's not like I don't think it's a foreign concept. Or like recognize where your input is valid or not. When it's a meal I'm consuming like a turkey, I have no problem telling my friend, hey, I'm not a fan of the way you cook your turkey. If you want to continue cooking,
Can
it
you
that way, by all
imagine-
means.
Can
I
you
think that-
imagine what it must be like to watch a movie with Corey Campbell and like the conversation that occurs afterwards when so many things are taken so seriously when you just wanted to watch a movie? Like you know what I mean? Like you didn't need the historical inaccuracies of Braveheart explained to you line by line. Like you just wanted to see, a sexy Scottishman scream freedom, you
At the end of the
didn't
day-
want to have
the
have
famous
this
line.
conversation
This
afterwards.
roast is like 10 minutes too long. Okay, so what it comes down to for me, my line is, can this person do anything to change it? And if the answer is no, then nothing, no reason for me to bring it up. But if it's something like
Wick is the most
hygiene issue, or
unfun
if it's
person
a
I've
way
ever
they
met.
dress, or simply something that they can change, then I'll be like, yo, you should tell your girl, right, to not wear her hair like that anymore.
You would comment on
Or-
vitiligo potentially. That can be changed hypothetically. There's a little person that did
I
it
don't know
at
what
some
that is.
point. Well, look it up. There's
You
a
know,
very
like,
known case. Of
patches
someone with
patches of lighter skin. It typically affects darker skinned people more often, and sometimes people
Sure,
bleach their skin and get a lot of
reasonably-
whitening cream.
Sure.
to make
I
it
know
all
what
go
you're talking
away.
about right
Yeah.
now. I know what you're
But,
talking about right
they
now.
also have like skin darkening cream, don't they? So
Yes,
maybe,
they do.
maybe
Okay,
get her
so-
that for her birthday or something.
So
Real
again, if it's
popular
something that can
in
be
America.
reasonably change, and that definition is going to change from context to context, right? I'd have to think about this specific example more before I gave you an honest answer. But if it's something like something simple to change, but the person's doing wrong, maybe they got big ass thick glasses that I just found repulsive for some reason. I don't know, right? Then I might mention it in that case. But if it's just something structural about them that I just do not find attractive when I find repulsive, unless it's to an extreme degree where I have to be like,
I have
What's
thoughts
that?
I have thoughts
Huh?
from a chatter. Okay, so if my best friend's date looked like a 1, I wouldn't care. But if she went on the internet and expressed her thoughts while having a frog avatar, I'd be suspicious and worried. And I call that out. It's from the chat. Okay, just
Yeah, well, your chat is full of retards. So who
Can
cares?
you imagine
great.
seeing a movie with Eucharist when you just want to watch Braveheart and watch a Scottishman yell? Like, ridiculous.
ridiculous.
great.
I'd
No,
probably
okay,
write
but
one in
what
the
Scott's
book, you
getting
know?
to there is you seem like the kind of person who would spend the next like hour after the movie pointing out all the historical inaccuracies you found on Reddit. Like,
No,
that's what you used to make.
Yes.
I
Oh,
love
did
to
you
get
enjoy
movies.
making a murderer? Well, I just looked up that they didn't actually discuss the gun that was in the room, and
No, you prove my point.
some
of
of us
how
just wanna watch
judgmental you
Netflix.
two are. So, like, you're just proving my point of how
Everyone's
judgmental you
judgmental.
are.
This is how you come off. Right?
Everyone's
I come off a certain
judgmental.
way. Scott comes off a way. We can interpret this as human beings. Like it's fine.
Eucharist.
Make judgments about each other.
Eucharist. What say you? Eucharist is a wholesome individual, right? So I can only expect a wholesome answer.
I mean, I actually partially agreed with Doobie on that. Like to the extent that like something appeared actually wrong, I would want to check in and be like, you know, you okay? They okay? Like, you know, anything I can do to help. But yeah, I mean, I'm not just gonna be like, yeah, I don't know. It's not my
You see-
business for the most part.
okay,
I'm not
listen,
gonna intervene,
Eucharist,
right?
Eucharist, Corey Campbell, and Wick are the reason that in the 1990s and early 2000s there was so many of these movies that were popular, where young girls with busted glasses and coveralls covered in makeup
she's
would
all
get
that. That's a movie.
would get with the high school
With
jock,
historical
and
inaccuracies,
nobody would
for
go
sure.
to the jock and be like, dog, what are you doing? Why are you dating her? None of the boys were honest. This whole situation could have been avoided. We didn't have to hurt this poor girl's feelings as she goes to the dog party, because his boys would have stepped in and been like, hey man, what are you doing?
The real answer would probably be either anal or lots of blowjobs. It's one of those. That's the only
Yeah,
reason.
I mean,
you
probably.
get
I mean,
it.
like, and if he's
Yeah.
down for it, I mean, like, whatever. Just want to make sure your boys are
at
all
the
right.
end of the day, right? Like we all have different lines that we draw and things like that. And when it comes to being honest with individuals, if it's working for them, why would I poison the well, right? Because those kind of comments can poison the well, right? You
But
can
what if it's the other way
definitely
around?
poison
Well, okay,
things.
so-
Just let me
so what if-
finish my statement, and then
It's
you can go.
boring.
But fair enough. If you can poison the well by making these comments as offhand remarks like, yo, I think she's ugly, and then it gets stuck in people's brains and they can't get it out and it ruins things. But anyway, go on.
Well, okay, but like if that's enough to fuck up the relationship, right? You saying that you think his girlfriend's ugly, like maybe they shouldn't be in a relationship, right? Maybe that's you as
Right?
a friend putting that little nugget out there, and if that nugget's enough to break it up, then it should be broken up for both their sakes.
I mean,
Like
like,
that-
but the real thing is like, how close are you with your boy is another element here. Because if I'm real close with like, if it's like one of my guys that I've known since high school, I can tell that motherfucker anything, and like that's not gonna do anything to the relationship, and that's the type of relationship we have. But like, if like we're coworkers and we started like having a few drinks after work, and like we kind of know each other and we kind of watch the game together every now and then, but like we don't have a deep, rich history, like I might be like, that's weird, and keep my fucking mouth shut.
Wait, okay, but what if it's the other way around? Like, what if your friend has a girlfriend who's really hot? Like, she's like extremely hot. Do you tell him that you think she's really hot?
No.
Yes, absolutely.
Never?
That's even more important, because it's like, dude, like, don't, like, hey, I love you, bros before O's. Don't ever let this bitch be alone with me. Like, I don't trust myself. I don't want to be a part of this. Like, just, you know what I mean? Like, just
That has
keep
ruined
her,
things.
keep her away from me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't fucking, I was like, you know what I mean? Like, I got a chubby just when she went to the kitchen. Like, I need
When
you to
I was-
not,
Oh,
you know what
When
I
I
mean?
was
Like,
when I was much younger, Wick, I had this situation where a friend of mine was dating someone who was like an 8, right? They were up there. And for the time, right? 18, just out of high school, it was like, oh wow, this is like the unicorn, as they say. Yeah, I made the mistake of telling my friend that, and I didn't know he was a jealous asshole, but it really kind of just ruined our relationship.
Well,
I
you just said he was
trying
a
to be
jealous
nice.
asshole, like,
Can I
which
flip
means
the
you got
script?
rid of a bad friend.
Can I flip the script? What if whatever, your boy who's the Quasimodo, and they bring home someone who is ultra attractive? Do you go to the ultra attractive person saying, "Hey, why are you dating my like
No, but
No,
if
I
in
don't
that
know this
situation-
bitch.
In that
I don't know
situation,
this
will
bitch.
talk
I don't
to-
care.
I will talk to my friend and say, "Hey, right? Like you see her, you see you. Like, because that increases the chance that there's some kind of gold digging or exploitive kind of thing. I will be worried for my friend in that case. That's all.
I'd be high-fiving him like, dude, I didn't know you were hung like that, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh man,
I didn't. You must be a grower. I had no idea, man. Like, fuck it, good for you, dude.
so I haven't given my opinion here, and I don't. What's the plan? I'm not really sure. I've been listening to you all to like try to decide what I think, and I don't know now because I came in here with saying absolutely not, but you've made some convincing arguments as to why I should. Okay, if she's not disfigured, right, and she is just okay, all right. You know something we haven't talked about, right? What we haven't talked about is like this girl in relation to their dating history. So if this is a person, right, who I've never seen DB's women, right, but like let's say that he only dates models, right? That's what it'll tell us anyway. I won't even be asking him. But
Absolutely.
he only dates like.
My question is,
supermodels.
why are you friends with Andrew Tate?
So
Terrible
he only
idea.
dates supermodels, and then he comes home with someone, or he introduced me to someone that is definitely not that, the opposite of this, right? Like, I guess I would have to like ring alarm bells, like,
Right?
I think I would have
it's a
to
good
bring
thing.
that up.
Or it's a good thing. Like, you see this all the time when people like get out of a bad relationship and like their next partner is like wildly different than their type, because they're just like, man, am I falling for the wrong type of person? And they like just go after a different type almost actively. And you're like, hey man, is this healthy? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are you really into this person, or are you like just like, or like, do you have the right motivations here? Like, and again, I'm memeing mostly because it's a stupid fucking topic. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, it's going to be contextual based off of a ton of different factors. And
like what I
you
just
know what I
said.
mean? Yeah, but except you took this shit way too serious. So I made fun of you for it. But yeah, it's going to be contextual of a bunch of
I
different
want to
factors,
finish
you know?
explaining this. So yeah. Okay. So I think their dating history of because look, I've had friends. Well, I think for most of my friends, have like been like not attracted to their girlfriends, right? And and not like I'm a person who's not attracted to conventionally beautiful women. It's just my friends, my male friends, tend to not date women who are super hot. So it's like not usually a big deal. Every so often, one of them does come home with one, and like that's a thing. But if she was disfigured, that's a different thing, right? If she's disfigured, then fuck. What would I say, right? Like, I'm not if she's severely disfigured, it's a talking point. And
I feel like what you do if she's severely disfigured, honestly though, is like you start beating around the bush and like gauging what the fuck is going on without being outright about it. Like you'd be like, hey, so how did the two you meet? You know, like it's like, I know you're really into rock climbing and she doesn't have legs, so kind of like, you know, obviously it wasn't rock climbing that you
got to
met
figure
her,
at some point she's probably been asked this question 1,000 times and she's going to be expecting it, right? So like, yeah, I agree with Scott. Just beat around the bush until either they bring it up or it just like naturally becomes a conversation.
Yeah, I feel like I would wait. I'd
wait until she's not around, for the record.
No, I feel like I would just wait until they brought it up, right? Like if there's because the only thing you guys are bringing up is like them not having legs, right? And I consider that disability and not necessarily a disfigurement, right? I mean like
Fair enough.
some sort of like severe facial disfigurement. Like there's this in that Truly YouTube channel I was talking about, they talked about a guy who like doesn't have a jaw, like a lower jaw. And that's an interesting thing to
Roger
look
Ebert
at.
had that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it would just get in the way, right, ladies? But no,
Yeah,
like
I
the
don't-
other
so
question
my,
is like, how are you meeting the person, right? Because if you meet your boy, like just kind of like as like a random occurrence, because like you both go to this restaurant or bar often or something, that's a totally different scenario than if he brings the girl to meet you. Because if he brings the girl to meet you and he didn't mention any of this, right? There's like, it's probably a more like what's going on situation, as opposed to like you just randomly bump into him and then it's, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't expecting to introduce you to her.
But why does it have to be prefaced with the information? Like, I don't quite understand. Like, what do you have to be warned about anything other than like it's another
Corey,
person?
if you were dating somebody, would you care about them? Do you give a
Yeah.
fuck about the people you date? Okay, so if you were dating someone with a severe disfigurement and you were going to bring them over to, let's say, meet your parents or meet your friends. Let's say, since you said I was your good buddy, which I'm not, I'm just your buddy, not your good buddy, all right? But let's say you're bringing her over to meet me, right? After this conversation. Don't you think you might be like, hey, asshole, don't say anything about the cleft palate?
No, I don't need to do it because I actually trust my friends to accept whoever it is that I bring home or whatever, bring to show
This
them.
is why I know you're a socialist, because you trust people way too much.
Yeah, I absolutely do trust my friends. I very selectively trust and pick my friends. As in, I have no issues being able to say that, like, no matter who I bring, whoever I end up bringing or introducing to my friends, like, they will accept them. They will be more concerned with, like, whether it's a healthy relationship or dynamic. I have no problem putting my
That
stamp
seems
approval.
naive.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Are you?
I'm totally naive.
If she had a severe disfigurement
what
and I was
about-
gonna,
what
my
about family
boy,
members?
I'd be like, hey,
What about family members, Corey, that you don't pick, right? You don't pick your family members, and you're gonna take this girl home at some point, like you love her, and she's gonna meet your family, or he, I don't know if if you're bi, right? Like whoever your
That's
partner
fair.
is. Yeah. And like your family, who you can't pick, might say something. So would you then give them warning?
No, because if I have no problem, like, pretty much chastising my family if they ever, like, spoke bad about whoever my partner I bring to them. Also, at the same time, like, if they
What
have
if
a
they did it in
disfigurement,
front of her, though? That's
I'd have
no
right.
problem,
like,
That's what
I'd have
Scott's
absolutely-
trying to get to.
Yeah, I'd have no problem chewing out my family. Like, I call out trash
Right, but-
behavior regardless whether
but
it's
she
friends or
still
family.
gets insulted or uncomfortable from
damn
this
it,
situation.
If you have a disfigurement, like on you, that's not like a foreign concept to most people with a disfigurement or disability. Like that's just how you navigate the world through society at large in terms of like just negative comments.
Yeah, but like
I
you
have a
don't want to
question. I have
add
a
to
serious
that.
question. I've been thinking about this for like the last 10 minutes, and I'm super curious. So like, what if so let's say, I'm not accusing any of you of this, right? Let's say you had a small dick. Let's say it's like 4 inches and you're not Asian, right? So the women aren't
frog
expecting
size.
it.
Why do you say that?
So the women aren't expecting it, right? Still, like, do you warn them about the small penis before you like get into sex, or let's say you're black, but you have like an average size dick, right? It's just like 5
Do
inches.
you want a
or
serious
something.
answer to this
Like,
question?
do you,
Ruben?
and they're expecting, because you're black, it's gonna be like a fucking 30-inch fucking monster, right?
If you have
If you're
an
prime,
extreme-
right? Like when
if
you pull
have
down,
an
do you warn them
extreme when
before you
comes
take
to
it out?
this, if you have an extreme when you come to this, whether it be extremely like huge or extremely small, then yes, I think you should let someone, like the person you're
What's
with,
extreme?
know before.
Like,
Like if you got
exist.
like a
Micro
micro
penis is
penis,
extreme. And
right?
micro
If you
penis
got
is
a
extreme.
micro
Right.
penis,
It's an outlier.
need
Yeah,
to
I'd agree.
like you would. I think it's only polite,
Yeah.
right? To save yourself too from their reaction, to let them know ahead of time. Likewise, if you're Big Dick Wick here with a monster 13-inch long, right? That's a total lie, by the way. It's only 8 inches, Anyway, but no, if you got this monster schlong,
Sure.
right? You need to let them know, because this might affect them, because sometimes that could be just as devastating, because it just ruins it, right? Like,
Prime, how do you handle this? How have you handled this in your life?
Okay. Well, okay. So I talked about this is a long time ago. I don't know.
You just
if
text
were
her.
even-
You just text her, and you just say, "I'm gonna hit your anterior fornix," and then you let her Google it.
This is a long time ago. I'm not even sure Doobie was part of the channel back then. It was a long time ago. We had this conversation, but like about like it's happened.
It was
to
an
me
anatomy
with
joke
super
for the
petite
nerds,
girls, right?
boys.
Not most women, but super petite girls, right? Where like I was too large for them, right? It just is what it is. And they're like, I can't do this, or it hurts, right? And like, and so that's not a regular thing for me, right?
That's the worst.
Yeah, right. Like, it's not like it
Or they
happens-
put
it
your
happens
hand
all
on
the
your
time.
chest constantly, and you're just like, "Oh my fucking
yeah,
God.
right, yeah. I know,
Oh!
exactly, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, but like, but it's not like something that happens like super regularly for me. But if I did have like a monster, then yeah, I think I should warn people. I thought about this. Like, like most women aren't going to be comfortable with this. If you ask women, most women prefer something average to above average, right? Something in that like general range. So like anything above that, it's going to be super awkward for them, unless they like are a stated size queen. So I think I would like, hey, like this is a thing.
Or you get
if
creative with
you feel
positioning.
uncomfortable
Like there are
about
certain
that.
positions that are better than others.
It's best
Yeah,
to let
there are
people know what to
that's true.
expect. You don't
Interesting.
want them to
Yeah.
be surprised, right? You don't want them to
Yeah.
be shocked. Like, if you want to have an actual relationship with someone, you have to be as honest as possible. And if you have an extremity, right, in any part, it doesn't have to be dick size, right? But if you have like a tail, for example, like a deformity, like that's not visible.
Corey, if
Okay,
you
like we
interrupt
all
him
have
to
tails.
say that we all have a tail,
Yeah,
I'm
we
going
do.
to smack you.
Absolutely.
Oh my god.
Vestigial organs
Do
are
you-
a thing.
But you know what I mean. If you have something that's not immediately apparent about you that is extremely abnormal, best practice is to let them know, right? Let them know as soon as it starts getting serious, as soon as you get to that point where you're going to have any kind of physical intimacy, just be upfront.
Now, what if you're a woman and you have like massive fucking beef curtains? I think you should let the guy know
Hi.
about that.
Hey,
you let me know, and I'm like, I'm gonna have a good night because
Fucking
I
disgusting.
love
Oh
it.
my god.
I love it.
That's so nasty.
The longer, the better. Oh, more.
Yeah,
to
actually gonna
eat.
make me vomit.
Oh, I'm a fan of roast beef. So I'm just letting you know, man. That's amazing. And it's so weird to me that some guys have a problem with that. Like, I don't get it. Like, what's the issue? Like, and that some women are so self-conscious about that they get like a vagioplasty where they like cut it
Face?
down like, oh. It's because of Doobie, because of men like him.
Look, I have preferences. I don't know where they came from, but they exist. Okay, can't help it.
Oh.
In that
Do you
frog
like going
DNA.
down? Do you like going down on women?
We've talked about that actually.
Oh yeah, that's right.
if
We have. Never mind.
I don't enjoy it, right? I don't think it's something that like
Eucharist has the
something that you,
biggest
like,
regret
enjoy,
on his
enjoy.
face right now.
But
Like,
it's
Eucharist
something,
has
but
the
it's something
biggest-
you do, right? And I'll do it if I like the woman, right? If I like her, I'll do it, and because I want to have a good time. If I don't like her, I'm not gonna fucking do it.
Okay.
I'll be real with you. I'm sure a lot of girls do like it, just wouldn't like it from somebody like you that doesn't like it.
Enthusiasm
I can
counts
pretend
for a
to
lot.
like it. That's the
That
thing.
holds
I
true
can
for
pretend
all
to like it.
oral.
I can make them feel like
Yeah.
I like it.
Mm.
It's just
Okay.
I feel like oral sex generally isn't something that people actually enjoy. It's more they pretend to enjoy it because they want to please their partner.
What? No. I love oral
Yeah, you're
sex.
insane.
That's not
love
true.
it. I absolutely love it.
You're coping.
I've said it many times. Okay.
You're gaslighting crime.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Okay. All right. Well, this was interesting. I think this could. This would be interesting. We had some women here. Honestly, like I didn't expect to have this conversation. But it'd be interesting. We had some.
There are plenty of women
here.
in the audience calling us virgins. Why don't you get them on here?
So yeah, maybe we should make this a whole thing, because I'm curious. Like, I don't know. All right. So we'll just have to leave this alone. It's an awkward conversation. I still don't know
Doobie
as
can
much
take
what-
on challengers in the late night.
Oh boy. All right.
I
So
will do that for sure.
hey everyone, thanks for being here. This is the Reverie Roundtable, which we have Mondays 8 p.m. Eastern. We've got a fantastic group of individuals. They might have convinced you otherwise with what we just said, but they are a fantastic group of individuals. So let's introduce them. If you're watching this on YouTube later on, please like, comment, and subscribe. Helps out the channel. I would love to have you here. Okay, let's introduce. Let's introduce my man Wick back with us, right? Just a bit. It's a bit chillier there for him. A cold wind blows and he shivers. Wick, how are you doing?
I'm much more aerodynamic than I was, and this is going to be necessary, right, to dodge all the points that people throw at me today. I'm going to do a lot of that. I'm going to do a lot of speed running through some trains of thought. It'll be fun, but now I'm equipped for it, right? Honest answer, I had to go out in public recently, and I was very scruffy. And I wanted to feel good and look good. And I am going to be going to TwitchCon, and so this is in preparation for that as well. So yeah, nice to be here. The topics are great today, and I'm really excited to get into both. So
Okay, doke. Next, we have my man Eucharist. We haven't had here in forever. We've missed Eucharist so much. Eucharist, thank you for stopping by. Honestly, like it's been lonely here without you.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad I could make it tonight. We were, as I said, road tripping back today, but I got your message right before we got on the road, and I was like, you know what? I think I can do this tonight. So skated in right under the wire. Although I apparently had an extra half hour, I could have been, doing research and getting a leg up on you all.
Giving your own opinion.
Yeah, I just don't. It's not what I signed up for tonight. I'm in discrimination brain, not relationship conversation brain. I'm ready to duke it out.
I thought it was basically beauty discrimination that we were discussing. But yeah, Eucharist is like, I've got a hot wife. I don't want you guys to comment.
Yeah, no, I just not much to weigh in at this point. All
right. Well, thank you. Seriously, I'm so happy to have you.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
The other nicest person I know.
Good night, Toxic Apple.
Corey.
Love you, brother.
Corey, thanks for stopping by once again, being a part of this. Great member of our community. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Always grateful to be here. Always happy to receive the invitation and oblige when I can. Try to never take it for granted. And I'm a very serious, PhD candidate in biochemistry. You can find me on Twitch, Corey Campbell 84, and I'm here to call out my good friend Eucharist as a coward, dodging our conversation, just running nonstop.
Yeah, I'm a very real PhD candidate in fake science, and I say, whine some more, you real scientist. Okay.
All Eucharist knows is alchemy. All right, let's go to our friend Scott. Scott, thanks for coming back and already bringing the spice at the very start of all this. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. So I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. Find me everywhere as Fabian Liberty. Really need YouTube subs right now because I'm almost at 6,000 watch hours and 30,000 views, but need to get monetized. I need subs. So if you want to show some love or you want to hate watch, I don't care. It's all good for the algorithm. Hook me up. Also, I just wanted to say, in the name of giving advice to friends, Wick, I consider you a friend of me in a lot of ways. And I want to let you know that, I do respect your hair choices. But just so you know, if you want to join Patriot Front, you actually have to be an FBI agent. That's how that works. So, just letting you know. Right. Okay. I just want to let you know in case you thought the haircut alone would get you in. It's not going to be good enough.
Thank you so much. and last but not least, we have our Dark Lord and Savior, Doobie. Doobie's back with us. Thank you for stopping by again. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to say to Scott. Scott, if you have a link, a YouTube link, if you could put it in my chat or something, then Spiel can hit you up.
I see you trying to force me to get into your chat. I don't want to watch all these people hate on me. All right, I'll put it in there.
All right. Well, you provided me ample reason. Okay, moving on. Topic 1. Brigham Young University is a school owned by the Mormon Church. They have a rule which prohibits same-sex dating and even showing any signs of affection to members of the same sex. A federal lawsuit has been launched against the school and others in other schools for their anti-LGBTQ policies. Should a school that has such policies receive public funds? Should any school, whether they receive funds or not, be allowed to discriminate on the basis of race or sexual orientation? Or should the rights of private organizations always be paramount? This came to my, it didn't recently come to my attention, but like I saw an article talking about how, about a person who went to Brigham Young University and who was gay and who felt lonely. They are trying to like provide support for incoming students, and that support was shot down. And I'm just like, it's really sad. Actually, it's really annoying. It seems weird that it still exists to me. I thought actually it didn't at this point, but it does. So like, but they are a private organization, so should that matter? We'll start with my friend Wick.
Yeah, so I didn't graduate from Brigham Young University, but as someone who's raised Mormon, a lot of my family did, and I know a lot of people who attended BYU or one of their offshoots like BYU Idaho or things like that. So they are a private institution, right? So they don't receive public funds in the same way as a public or a state college would, or things like that. They obviously still get funding from people's GI bills and things like that, but this is a little different than directly receiving money from the state. When it comes down to the meat of the question, though, whether or not we should allow private institutions to make decisions based on prejudices and behaviors, I think it's important to note the difference right here between refusing entry to someone who is LGBTQ rather than having rules against PDAs and public displays of affection. I don't know how it is now currently, but there was a time where all PDAs in BYU were strictly prohibited. All long hair was strictly prohibited. You couldn't show anything, like you had to have like not long sleeves but longer sleeves. You couldn't wear jeans, right? They've had all sorts of rules. So I think there is a substantive difference between simply having rules against PDAs and rules against accepting people of different groups. If their rule was we don't accept people who have these beliefs or have these lifestyles or are of these races or genders or what have you, that would be wrong, and I think that that's something that the government should act against. But when it comes to these kind of lesser discriminations, and they are still discriminations, don't get me wrong, I don't know if I would be okay with the federal government coming down against them. That's my stance.
Thank you so much. Next, Eucharist, please.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question for me, and I've been like, it's something I've thought about before, something I've been like going back and forth on all day. I'm uncomfortable with a lot of this from a variety of different angles. So first, like conversations around churches' tax exempt status, I think that people sometimes forget that there are other exemptions to Title IX regulations. So for instance, we still have single-sex colleges in the United States who maintain the right to only admit men or only admit women. That is one of the exemptions to Title IX. Their admissions process is exempt from sex discrimination under Title IX. That was built into the code as well, along with this religious exemption and some other ones. So I just as a general rule, I wish people would think, more broadly about these things and say, like, if we say exemptions are bad, we need to get rid of them. No discrimination should be allowed. There's a lot of other things that might fall as well that we should be aware of. I think that yeah, as Wick said, like BYU and organizations like it, religious colleges are different. They are private institutions, but they do receive federal money, specifically most often through federally backed student loans and through Pell Grants. And so the question for a lot of people is like, should, you know, the money that's basically funding the student, not the school as directly, should that bring this obligation? Of course it does. You know, if you take federal money, there are strings attached. The lawsuit itself I found really interesting. So the head of this organization that started the lawsuit, the Religious Exemption Accountability Project, has said recently, like last month, that he expects a ruling within the next couple of months on this. But the article that you sent, which was from last year, Prime, said that the outlook doesn't look good. And the person who wrote that article is a law professor who wrote one of the first pieces of real scholarship on these religious exemptions in 2016. It's linked in the article if you guys want to go read it. But I ended up like really agreeing with that law review piece that concludes, and I just want to read from it really quickly. Sorry, I lost it. In the end, administrative implementation of religious exemption to Title IX is not how a pluralistic society should structure religious exemption to generally applicable non-discrimination laws. What that means is what we've done is we've given over a huge amount of control to the Office of Civil Rights within the Department of Education. They basically just get to decide whether or not they give this exemption to a school or not. The school writes a letter. You can go read the letters for yourself. And they basically always grant the exception, but it's just up to this office. It's just an administrative bureaucratic task. And that's not how we've handled a religious exemption in other cases. We have legislative exemptions. We've had like RFRA and all these other things. And we've had Supreme Court exemptions, things like the Yoder case, and more recently the case about the Catholic adoption place in Philadelphia. But this is one of the only ones that we have that this is just like pure bureaucratic administrative fiat that administers this exception and decides whether or not it applies. I kind of agree with this article at the end of the day that I don't think that's how we should be handling it. We should probably be handling it through the legislative practice. Like that's how we should handle these things in a pluralistic society. I think, but at the end of the day, the second question, should these institutions be allowed to discriminate at all? Yes, I think private organizations and institutions should be allowed to discriminate. I think that's at the heart of freedom of association, right? I wouldn't expect to be able to go join a mosque and then, you know, say, oh, by the way, I'm going to bring my alcohol and my pork and I'm just going to hang out. You guys are cool with that, right? No, they can discriminate against me. They could bodily remove me if they wanted to. So I think that if we're going to freely associate, you have to be able to discriminate within these private organizations. But yeah, there's going to be strings attached when you start taking state money. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I think there's lots of things to talk about, so I'm very excited. Let's go to Corey.
Yeah, well, I'm a filthy Canadian, so I'm a little bit of an outsider, and I'm disappointed to not see my fellow Canadian lactoid on the panel, but maybe next time.
I think he's visiting Toronto, you know, visiting home base.
Checking in with CSIS, our Canadian CIA. That totally makes sense. Based off of my sort of the understanding that I gathered from Wick in terms of like and Eucharist, like Brigham Young University is like a private institution or private school, and therefore it doesn't like directly receive federal funding, but it sort of indirectly receives federal funding, and it seems like sort of a gray area to a certain extent. And like if in fact what Eucharist says is true, and I have no reason to doubt anything that they say because I trust them, I tend to sort of err with their position, but I do think there's something to be said of like if there's, in my mind, and I'll be transparent of like I'm pretty anti-religious, and so if there's any form of like indirect or direct federal money like going to this institution, like I'm totally in favor of like there should be no discriminatory practices, and sort of what Eucharist touched upon of like the potential ramifications in terms of like, well, yes, there's discrimination, and like there's discrimination when it comes to like single-sex schools. I'm totally okay with abolishing single-sex schools. I'm okay with that consequence because I actually don't think those should exist either. There's a lot else that I want to get into, but I'll keep it short for now.
Very interesting. I'm really liking this conversation so far. Let's go to Scott.
Yeah, so, you know, Eucharist kind of took a lot of what I was going to say, but I just want to say this, that, you know, if you discriminate in any way against BYU, and for the record, this suit names a lot of other universities. My alma mater, Liberty University, for example, I went to grad school there, and it was kind of the same thing. There was a dress code. You weren't allowed to have any public displays of affection, regardless whether or not they were hetero or homosexual. So when I did my research, I was like, I wonder, is that what's going on, right? And like, so I go to BYU's website, and they're like, this doesn't lead to marriage, no homos. And I was like, oh shit, all right, fucking BYU doesn't give a fuck. All right, let's go. But you know what I mean? I was like, I thought maybe it was just like, you know, some bullshit, but like, no, they're legit just hard discriminate against homosexual people. And then they're like, no, you go to our belonging place where we try and convince you to not be gay or we kick you out. But at the end of the day, like, you know, the university has to have a right to do that. That is just what freedom of association is. The question is, are they defrauding people, right? Are they not making this clear? And I think BYU actually probably has a better case than some of these other universities, because some of the other universities will discriminate against LGBT people, right? But they won't be very open about it. And so there's a possibility that someone goes to that school thinking they'll be accepted, and then their behavior isn't accepted, or their life isn't accepted, or who they are, their identity, right, isn't accepted. And then you could maybe make a case that like they deserve some compensation for the fraud that occurred. But I mean, with BYU, it's very clear that like they do not appreciate or allow any form of homosexuality. As, you know what I mean? So like there's no fraud occurring, right? You chose to go to a school that is against your, either you could say choices, lifestyle, or you could simply say who you are. And if you go there willingly and they're not denying you transcripts, because in the case, you know, if you read some of the examples, one of the things is, you know, they temporarily suspended someone. They were like, look, you were put on administrative suspension because like you came out and like you put a bunch of like pro LGBT stuff on your Twitter, which is kind of authoritarian and creepy as fuck. I don't necessarily appreciate it, but I respect their right to do so. And on top of that, they gave them all of their transcripts, right? They're not denying them anything that they've done, etc. So there might be some cases, you know, some limit cases for things that teachers might have done or like the culture might have done. But I think for the most part, yeah, you can't discriminate against them. Title IX, you know, 34 CFR, statute 106.12, like clearly gives them a religious exemption. You know, and the thing is that if you try and take away that religious exemption, right, and you say, well, they shouldn't have that because, you know, it's against that discrimination. Or let's say you take all federal funding away from them in terms of like the GI Bill and federal student loans and make them like not able to apply for those things so that it's a totally private university. Both of these are still a form of discrimination because the market gives these things to other people and puts them in an uncompetitive advantage by subsidizing universities that behave the way that they want to behave, right? And so I obviously, you know, the ANCAP here, the right answer is to get the fucking federal government out of education anyways, because they've ruined it and made it overly expensive. But yeah, I just, you know, while I personally dislike a lot of what BYU does and it doesn't match my values, I respect their right to do that.
Ubi, please.
I think that LGBT people are at some point just going to need to accept that some people, whether it's due to religious indoctrination or a general sense of revulsion toward the unnatural, will never accept their lifestyle. Right? There's going to be some people out there who are just not going to accept that you're, you know, lesbian or gay or trans or a deer person or whatever the fuck you're doing. Some people just don't. They're not going to like it. So given that a group of those people has formed a private institution where they've made it very clear they're not interested in allowing the perpetuation of this kind of lifestyle within their private institution, these people should just go to another school. That being said, I do agree that there is like the government does have like an interest in shaping the culture, right? And I think it would be a positive thing if the culture was shaped in a way that this kind of discrimination was less common. So I think I'd agree that, you know, if they're receiving public funds, given that these public funds are coming from lots of LGBT people, lots of people who don't agree with this kind of discrimination, it does make sense to say that, hey, if we're funding this thing, right, they don't get, they're going to be rules that come attached to this, and we want one of those rules to be that you can't discriminate against this group of people. And that does open up a lot of other interesting doors. But I think as a baseline, I think that makes sense. I think that's a totally fair and reasonable position to have.
So to address that a little bit, so at least to my knowledge, right? And I could be wrong. I did a little bit of research on this, and other than when they enter into partnerships with public universities, such as the University of Utah, the only federal funding that they receive is through things like the GI Bill, federal subsidized loans. And in that case, I think that I would draw the distinction of the money isn't going directly to the school, and the people who are using the money they receive from these loans and choosing to go to BYU or another such school with their federal money that they have received, I think that kind of gives a lot more leeway, I think, to what should be allowed. I do not think you should be able to tell an individual that you are giving a federal loan to that you can't go to these universities if you use our federal money. I think that smacks a little bit of authoritarianism, in my opinion.
Wait, why?
Right? Why? Because if you are giving money to go to college, but if the colleges that you were allowed to choose have to be of the same zeitgeist or the same kind of ideology that the government approves, this goes into some very bad territory. So say, for example, Trump gets elected. Let me give you an example. Trump gets elected, right? And he thinks that any college teaching CRT is just antithetical to American values. So he makes a law saying if you go to any university that creates a CRT, you cannot use your federal loan money to choose to go to that. I think we'd all have problems with that, or most of us would have problems with that. Well, maybe not you, but I mean, most of us would.
Like, I mean, so you're saying that if there were like on the other hand, if there were like a private college that formed that was run by open white supremacist Nazi types, right? And they were in this college indoctrinating people into fascism, you would say that federal money should be going to that college?
If the people who choose to go to it want to use their federal funds to go to it, I don't think you can tell them no. Well,
Why?
at least not morally. I think legally, obviously, you can, but I think that morally, you're taking away their right to choose in that case. And
Well, they should. Well, if they're reaching into the public, like the public piggy bank, and
I never thought I would agree with
invest in your future toward education. I think it's totally fine for the public through our representatives to say that, hey, you can't use this money, this investment, to do this fucked up shit. Like, I really don't understand why
what the government decides is fucked up shit can change dramatically based on generation to generation, and also based on the current ideology, whatever party happens to be in charge. Like, for example, back in the 60s and the 50s and things like that, many of the if the government were to take this stance, right, any college that had the allowed LGBT public displays of affection, they wouldn't be able to receive federal money for that reason, because it would have been the government deciding in this case that it's...
The way that you combat that, you just make it really difficult to pass these things so that they don't happen willy-nilly, right? Like, it's like there's a long process you need to go through, and you make it very difficult to do this kind of thing. I mean, so it's not like jumping from year to year, but even still, like, I don't understand why you would say that if there's an off chance that Trump or some other meanie might get elected and use this rule to do mean things. So therefore, we need to allow all the terrible shit that might happen in Trump's America. We need to allow it right now. So if there were like a white supremacist university or an anti-CRT university or a university that was indoctrinating people into like anti-transness or whatever pet issue you have, we should allow public funding to go through to that university because you're afraid of what Trump might do.
The problem is when you make these mechanisms in order to allow the federal government to dictate what is moral and what is immoral, what is right and what is wrong, it's going to be much more easy for them to abuse it than if you simply do not create these mechanisms in the first place. It becomes it creates an extra obstacle, for example.
The issue here is you just go one layer back, right? Which I'm actually surprisingly, like, I'm agreeing with literally everything you're saying. But obviously I don't want fucking Nazi schools funded by taxpayer dollars. But the problem is that we've created a system where the government takes money from people and then uses that money to subsidize the university system instead of letting the market handle this situation. And so the situation that you're describing, Doobie, is that a Nazi school be funded by taxpayers sounds awful, right? And you're using that as like the refutation as to why we shouldn't let a heavily Marxist influence, which would be like basically every sociology degree in America, right?
Yeah.
Like why would
My
no? I mean,
sociology degree.
Wait,
just because a majority of sociologists are like will say they're critical theorists or Marxists.
So we already have so many layers before we even get to a school being able to get this federal money, right? Like you can only get federally backed student loans. You can only get Pell Grants. You can only use GI Bill at accredited institutions, right? And so you have certain schools that are approved by their state board of education to grant degrees, but are not accredited in a way that the federal government will recognize for the purposes of those loans. Okay, so those schools are already out. I would think that would catch most Nazi schools, okay? But then like we have like several thresholds here. What we're talking about now is a particular policy that's relatively new in American higher education compared to, you know, colleges being founded in the 1700s to now. We passed this in the 70s, right? Pretty new kind of bureaucratic fiat. We don't even have to go back to like the 60s or the 70s. We can look at just two things that have happened very recently. So the current Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, Catherine Lehman, got a lot of flack back during her first tenure from I have the wiki up in front of me. I don't remember this, but 2013 to 2017, because she changed some rules in how Title IX was applied, particularly for sexual harassment and sexual assault cases, and was criticized basically by for undermining due process. And then the Trump administration came in and kind of gutted all of that, and then the Biden administration came back in and reappointed her and is reinstating all of this. There's this kind of like bureaucratic whiplash that we've given over just this like administrative fiat to them that's just crazy. But then on the other side of the equation, we have the Paycheck Protection Plan, or whatever it was called, the PPP, right? Where we had all of these organizations, religious institutions included, Catholic churches and everything else, that were able to access this money because it was generally available to the public if you showed that you needed it to keep your staff on, blah, blah, blah. And then here's the, you know, mechanisms for forgiveness. So that was a case where, yeah, the federal government was doling out money to tons of people that y'all would think were awful, fascist, transphobe, whatevers, but it was just generally available if you met certain criteria, and we gave it to them. They were federally funded. So I think the problem with maybe both of those is that we just have stuff coming from on high. PPP was legislative, so maybe that's not as bad. But like, to your point earlier, Scott, about people being defrauded, sometimes people are, like you mentioned, like BYU, other schools like this, they've got statements of faith, they've got handbooks, codes of conduct. You know, if you don't know this stuff going into it, you're kind of like closing your eyes. But there are cases where like a school will discriminate in this way, and then the student will say, whoa, like, why'd you do that? And then they'll apply for a religious exemption, right? So the religious exemption is kind of assumed. You don't have to get it, but it has been enforced, like somebody getting pregnant out of wedlock, and then they lose their job at a nominally Christian school.
That's why
like,
fraud is different.
And then they get it.
Yeah. And BYU is clearly not fraudulent in this because they're really
I think
open.
It's just
but also just to the whole like Nazi thing, right? Like, you know, so this is a book that I'm reversed. It's ethnicity and family therapy, right? So even at Liberty University, right, I had to take a multicultural competencies course, right? In terms of like, which was a super fucking woke class, by the way. Because that's the only way you get KCREP accredited to be a counselor, right? So like, even when there's also these pseudo government, private institutions like KCREP, you know, for the ACA and things like that require accreditation as well. And like, you can't get most loans, and you can't go to a school for a counseling degree, not just as a regionally and federally accredited university, but also like for a counseling program, it needs to be KCREP accredited. So like there's a ton of barriers to entry here, from a lot of different places. And I know that BYU, I don't know if they have a counseling program specifically, but if they did, they would essentially need the same thing if they wanted to get like any level of seriousness or funding or capacity to be able to like fill out.
One more thing, and then I'll shut up for a little bit. Oh no, I just lost it. Sorry, somebody else go.
I want to sort of address or like ask about the point that I think Dewey made, in terms of like, you know, if you just don't agree with the school's policies, you just go to a different school. So I would ask the question to Wick, since they shared that they grew up Mormon, or they're like more in the Mormon community. So this is just like ignorance on my part, because I just don't know, like, how much choice does like, you know, a student growing up in a Mormon community have in choosing universities?
Plenty.
Like,
I didn't go there, for example.
Plenty.
And I was very big into it. Like, in fact, there's a kind of like this counterculture in the Mormon religion that if you did go to BYU, you're a normie.
You're
like,
square.
It's basically. And so there is I'm sure in certain families and certain conditions, there is a lot of social pressure, right, to go to BYU, but that can be found with any university. I don't think that's
Well, yeah.
unique,
So I'm
right?
more asking the larger question of like the freedom to go to a non-Mormon university. Like, is
Yeah,
that like
easy. Yeah.
okay?
That's going to wildly depend, right? Because I knew people whose families would not pay for their school if they didn't go to Liberty, for example,
Right,
right?
that-
Like
that's
this is a
pretty
real
much-
thing.
I mean, yeah, but
And
that's
what I
a
wanted to address.
that's
So-
not
Yeah,
a
yeah,
that's not a unique
No, I think the
position.
parental
I don't
stuff
think that's
we
a
can deal with separately, maybe. But
yeah,
like,
that's tangential, right? I don't think
Yeah,
that
no, I
it,
understand it's tangential,
it's a
but
different
I'm just trying to
it
problem.
bring,
matters.
like
It does matter, but
No,
not
I
maybe
agree
not
with
the
you.
federal
people
policy.
like
I guess-
these perfectly free agents, especially like growing up who are still living
No
with their
one's
parents.
perfectly
Well,
free.
wait, hold on,
That
but
is
you can
very frank.
even if your mommy and daddy aren't going to pay for your college if you don't go to the college they want you to go to, you can still make the decision not to go to
Right.
college then, right?
Correct.
Go
Correct, yeah.
do something else
With-
if you can
with
pay
a
Or
for
get
it.
federal
And if
student loans.
mommy and daddy are paying for you, you're not getting a loan, right? Or at least,
Well,
it's mommy and daddy's money,
depends.
then not the federal government's. Even though sometimes it's
Yeah, so
supplemental
to say that they don't have like free agency to make a decision like on their own is kind of silly.
So I think
All right,
Scott
so
brought up an
real quick,
interesting point.
I want to say something really
I wanted
quick,
to say
and
you
it's
said
just a
something
moral
smart.
thing. I appreciate it. If you are in a situation, right, and you are under the age of 26, and mommy and daddy will only pay for you to go to a super religious school, right? What you do is you find two friends that you trust to write a email, a small letter saying that they can confirm that you have been homeless in the past year. Whether or not you're homeless or not, but if you can get two people to say that you have been homeless in the past year, the federal government will then waive whatever it is that your parents are making in terms of determining whether or not you can get student loans. So
Don't
if, for
defraud the federal
example,
government, gang.
I'm just saying what people do. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do this. I'm just saying this is a possibility
This
if
is
you're
just a
stuck in a
mechanism
religious
that is
family,
available.
right? It's just a mechanism that is available. If they're saying you better go to Liberty University, it is possible. If you were homeless in the last year and you can get two friends to say that you were, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter how much your parents make. You can go ahead and get federal student loans based off of your own finances, and you don't have to wait until you're 26. Wink, wink. We can continue. I just wanted to put out that random factoid that anybody may or may not use.
So make sure those friends accept your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Scott said something earlier, right, about the theoretically you could just kind of let the market decide this, but the problem is that there's a distortion here where then the federal government is funding some institutions and not others. I listened to a podcast earlier with the guy who runs this religious exemption accountability project, Paul Southwick. It was on some formerly Mormon podcast, and they had two guests on there who were two former Mormon students. Actually, no, one from Liberty and one from BYU, who were part of this lawsuit. And he was saying his argument all along has been this lawsuit, if it accomplishes what it wants, which is getting rid of that religious exemption, wouldn't affect any truly private school in the sense that no school that is only privately funded gets affected. They get to discriminate all they want, right? These strings don't come attached, but what it will affect is schools that get federal money, which I want to buy, right? But the problem is there's still that wild distortion there. That's if I wanted to go to a school that represented my values and I would otherwise be eligible for federal money, I'm not now. I just it's an interesting case where, as we've already said, these private schools that are doing this, it's not like the government is writing them grants. Their state legislature isn't funding them. The federal government isn't funding them directly. The federal government is funding me as a student. Wherever I go, that money comes with me. And so that sort of seems like the reasoning for why the exemption was there in the first place, that somebody might want to go to a school like that, and somebody who's gay or trans definitely would not, and they can choose to go to a different one.
So
I just don't know how we handle that effectively. But
so there's one thing that I want to add to this
hold
that
on,
is
hold on,
really
hold on.
important, right?
1 second. Oh, actually, you add there one thing, and then I want to respond to you, Chris.
If
Didn't
this
mean to,
if
like,
this
put a
case
back on
if
him.
this case goes and reaches a decision in the appellate courts, not even necessarily in the Supreme Courts, right? What you have is specific precedents on money being attached to students and the federal government being able to restrict additional things on those schools. And the reason this is really, really important is this is the easiest way to poison the well for school choice. You have so many conservatives and people clamoring for school choice.
But they already do that, and that's what
they do already do that. But this is
there's a
additional.
significant number of people who oppose the current school choice movement because they're confident that it's going to
I'm
come
one
with
of
these
those.
things attached. Yeah,
I'm one of
Right, so,
those, right?
yeah.
But Right, but what you're saying is not an argument against me. What you're just saying is they already do that. So,
Sure. Okay.
right,
Yeah.
right. And what I'm saying is this is one more thing that makes it easier to poison school choice, that basically allows the federal government to have more purview over private institutions and private schools. And so you may think, oh, my state finally gets school choice. I'm going to send my kid to like a private school and I'm going to pay the difference. And then there's case precedent now that says, but since the government is giving money to the student and the student's going to that private institution, we can initiate diversity, equity, inclusion, or we can instigate whatever thing we currently perceive as moral into your schools. And that's less freedom, not just from a college perspective, but also from like parents trying to send their kids to private schools.
And that's important, right? I can't believe, Fabian, this is a weird topic because 100%, right? So this is important because whether or not you think that it would be the right thing to restrict government money towards anti-LGBTQ schools or what have you, realize that as soon as the wind shifts, this precedent that Fabian Liberty is talking about is going to be used against what you think is right and proper. It just is. It has historically been.
Trump will get elected. Trump will get elected, and then and all the Republicans will sweep in, and then it'll be illegal in every private school to have like social transitioning for your kids. It'll be like illegal, like for you to even send your kid, if you're like a woke like person with like a kid with gender dysphoria and you want to send them to a school that respects that, right? And you're in Florida or something, whatever machinations you have, right? Like you're not going to be able to do that.
I want to, so. And maybe I misheard you, so I want to make sure I understand what you said correctly. You said that like LGBT kids would be uninterested in going to Brigham Young University?
No, I'm saying that possibility exists for them to go to a school that is not on its face discriminatory against them. They could take that money elsewhere. But like Scott said, what we're suggesting now is saying that a student who did want to go to a school that is, I'm not denying, is on its face discriminatory, that option is not available to them now, or would not be if this lawsuit accomplishes its ends. Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying.
So
obviously there's tons of like gay and trans students who want to be at BYU for whatever reason, right? And they've presented their arguments like the article that you sent, one of the videos that was linked, was like a local news thing, and one of the gay students was like, I want to be here for the same reason any straight person wants to be here, right? It's a cool school and it has good education, and like what do you mean, why do I want to be, like I understand that. So I'm not saying like, they wouldn't want to be there in the first place. They obviously do, but what we're looking at is potentially a different kind of discrimination. I'm not trying to like build a victim complex here, but you're saying like a student who wanted to attend a religious institution that enshrined certain values, had certain code of conduct. Well, you can do that. You just can't take your federal money with you. Okay,
so you at the start of this, you said something about like what you gave this a really fallacious example.
Okay, I didn't want to say they're equivalent. I'm saying that I think any like free association implies some kind of discrimination, and I just accept that. I'm fine if the Atheist and Humanist Association at my school won't let me run for the board because I'm a Christian. They shouldn't. That would be dumb. I should not be on the board of the Atheist and Humanist Association because I'm not, right? Like that would just be stupid. They should discriminate against me, please.
No, okay. So like, I don't believe in this exemption though. This particular exemption, because we recognize in other areas that we don't allow this discrimination. It doesn't matter if you are a private business. If people come into your door, you are to serve them like others, right? Like, and that's the way it should be.
That's because we have this like threshold of like something that's a place of public accommodation, and that's how we deal with this in discrimination law. That like if the public generally is allowed in your door, great, you have to let the public in your door, and you can't discriminate on these bases that we've set down in the law. But a private educational institution isn't the same way. A church isn't the same way. A private social club isn't the same way. Not exactly. There are some things that you absolutely can't discriminate on, but like they're different in the sense that like it's an application-based thing. We want certain types of people who meet certain qualifications, and we're allowed to do that.
Wait, just as a clarifying question, go ahead, Brian.
You're gonna ask your clarifying question.
You just in the example that you get, like this is just maybe my ignorance on the U.S. system, but you threw in church there as like whatever, not a public space, so to speak. Is that actually like True.
Yeah, if you
Legally,
if-
yes, yeah, no, like
Yeah.
you can't
Different
get married
status.
in a Catholic church if you're not a member of the Catholic Church. They won't let you, and you can't.
Mormon
and you-
temples
you
are
can
another
sue
one.
on that basis, but you're not going to win.
So
Like
Mormon, yeah, just to be clear, Mormon temples.
I can't even go
they
in
don't
one.
let. Yeah, most people can't go in one unless under very strictly controlled conditions, right? Like an
Yeah,
open
but like,
house
what
or
about
something.
like just like getting
No.
through the doors?
No,
like,
no.
can they
If you are,
discriminate?
they have someone there, right? They'll
Okay.
check
Yep.
your recommend. They got a temple recommend. If you don't have a temple recommend, they turn you away.
Yeah, I dated a Mormon for quite a while and had
There-
2 kids with
There
one.
is
Yeah, no, they're
no
not letting me in.
problem. There
Send them
is
to Brigham
no
Young
problem.
University.
There is no problem that a school can discriminate over many criteria, right? Like in terms of grades, you don't have good enough grades, then you don't get it. Right? That's okay. If you don't have a proper disciplinary record, right? Like let's say you got, I don't know, arrested for all kinds of stuff, and they're like, sorry, you're not coming in. Sure. But an intrinsic characteristic, that's the problem, right? That's the issue.
Is a PDA
But
an
but
intrinsic
but prime
characteristic?
Kais, but prime Kais,
Oh,
the
oh my God.
extra disciplinary issues
Hey.
and the SAT scores and things like that are inherently discriminatory towards black people. So
I'm
you
okay with getting
can't
rid
do
of the
you
SAT.
can't
We don't-
you can't do that based off of merit.
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna ignore that. For now, I just I need to let me focus on this, and I can deal with Scott later. Right? I'll deal
So
with you
okay,
later.
on this
but-
on this
but-
point, Prime,
yeah.
I agree to an extent. So I was listening to a podcast on this. The president of Catholic University of America was talking about his position on this personally, legally, as a school, and their position. He's like, we do this at the beginning. We have like an anti-discrimination talk at the beginning. He says my position is we're not discriminating against people. We're saying there's certain things that you're not allowed to do while you're here, and that like this is the teaching of the Catholic Church, and this is what we enshrine in our code of conduct. Like you're allowed to come here, whatever you identify as, whatever your essential characteristics, whatever immutable characteristics, sorry, but yeah, we have a code of conduct that reflects our faith, and we exist as an institution to inculcate that faith in our students, and so you can either abide by that or you can leave or you cannot come. So I mean, in their perspective, they're not technically doing this kind of discrimination that is what you're talking about, which is like, no, you're a horrible person, you're a gay person, you're a trans person, you can't be here, you can't exist. They're not doing that. They're saying we have certain policies that are in place that, yeah, like here's how you're gonna live while you're here. Yeah.
Who fucking cares what they think? Whether like they think they're being discriminatory or not?
Well,
right?
the
Like,
federal
fuck
government
those guys.
does because it's
Yeah, I know,
right
and
there
I'm
in the
talking
law.
about-
You know,
I'm talking. Yeah. And the question was should, not is.
yeah, I know.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So they are being discriminatory
Yeah.
pieces of shit, right? They
Sure.
are making people who show up to their school and who happen to be gay feel like they are less than, right? You can pretend to be inclusive all you want, but the message is clear, right? Like your lifestyle, or quote unquote lifestyle, right? Your lifestyle is abhorrent, right? To our teachings. And so if you display that, or we suspect you are displaying that, right? Even if you're straight, if you suspect you of displaying that, then that's a problem. I think that, especially when it comes to matters of education, right? Where I mean, they're adults, because they're 18 plus, but they're still we are like educating them, right? We are enriching
Or
their mind.
socializing them.
Yeah, I think even better, right? Socializing them. That for an organization like that, like that's too far to create this atmosphere that is clearly discriminatory against people for just being who they are, right? Just or for if you are black, right? There's I think this is Brigham Young University, maybe it's Liberty University, I forget which one, right? But there's that rule where you can't date interracially, right? Like imagine
that was Bob Jones, and
Yeah,
that
that's not
policy was
BYU.
rescinded
Excuse
in
me.
2003. There was a court case, but yeah. So race
with the
is
rec-
something.
But
that-
why do you support that? Do you support that being rescinded?
I support their right to do
morally,
so.
yes. No, morally,
Right, like
yes.
more, I'm against Brigham Young University being against gay people. It doesn't match my values. The fact of the matter is that you don't have a right to stop people from discriminating. It is wrong. It's wrong to it's wrong to.
All the time. We actually do have.
I know. We violate people's rights all the time.
Okay, hold on. Scott, I already know your position on this, right? Hold on, and wait, I got to get this out of you, Chris.
I'm just saying, you ought to be able to say, you ought to be able to have a sandwich shop that says no N-words allowed.
Gotcha. I know. I'm very supportive of that stuff. I know. Eucharist, do you think that in the society that you would prefer, right, that Bob Jones University should be able to discriminate in that way and saying no interracial dating?
I'm gonna be annoying and be like Scott and say should in this sense can have two different like levels. Morally, no, they should not do that. It's a horrific thing to do, and you're just like you're awful people. Okay, let me give you an idealistic paradise. If we had an idealistic world where people could just be punished by Scott's like ideal marketplace for being assholes, I would prefer that, right? Everybody knows that school down the road is the racist school, and you just don't fucking go there, right? Like I would prefer that, but also like we live in a world with power and politics and money and everything else, and that's not how things work. And so sometimes we have to intervene into people's freedom and do these things. So yes, I
we don't have to.
It's a great thing. It's a great thing that Bob Jones lets black and white students date now. I think that's an awesome thing. The question for me and for this conversation, I think, is what we have right now in front of us is an exception that was carved out with the recognition that what we are laying down in certain anti-discrimination statutes, if you ask the people who practice these religions, would say, if I fully subscribed to this and ran my institutions this way, it would violate like the principles of my faith. So I'm either going to have to break the law or I'm going to have to leave the country or something else. And we decided in our pluralistic society that this was the best way to handle it. I don't think it was. Again, like I agree with this guy. I don't think the way we're handling it administratively is the best way to do it.
No.
But whether or not these institutions should be allowed to exist at all.
I don't give a shit about how it's done administratively. Like whatever.
I do. Like that matters a lot.
We can come.
I mean, I think it's important, but I think we kind of all agree that it's stupid.
Oh, hold on. Excuse me. Let me talk. Fuck. I'm just trying to get. Like I've been trying to get this out for 20 goddamn minutes. Shut up. All right. So, when it,
you can't get mad when you're a panelist and a moderator. Like you're gonna get interrupted.
Thanks. So Eucharist, like if by their religion, they said, and it works well with Mormons, right? By their religion, they say, well, brown people, black people, or some sort of mud people, it says so in our religious text, and we don't want them at all. Should that be allowed?
Well, no, we've decided that that's out of bounds. So something that I wanted to bring up actually.
No, not we, you, right? So like in the world that you were trying to create, right? You're saying.
Wait, so now you're asking me to like run a theocracy if I'm just coming down from on high and instituting my morals politically, but that's not what I think I should do. So I'm saying like we have a process by which we can adjudicate these disputes in a pluralistic society, and that's the legislative process. And we did that. We've figured out that there are things that are outside of bounds. Right?
No. You keep trying to weasel your way out of this.
I'm not trying to weasel. Prime.
Yeah, like, you are.
No, I'm not. Like, I think religiously, I think that sort of doctrine is wrong and abhorrent. So I think they should not believe it, and I think you're stupid if you do. Right? That's what I think.
Yeah, sure. But you would allow it.
Not
Prime. You fail to see the distinct. No,
oh my God, Scott, shut the fuck up. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you, Chris.
Prime, let me say no. Would I allow this? No, not necessarily, because what I would say is if we come to a point where legislatively we change this and we revise Title IX and say this exception no longer exists, then yes, these institutions should stop discriminating, or they will not receive their federal funding, and they should be fully private and fund themselves and just exist and do whatever discriminatory stuff they want without the federal funding. If that's what the law says, they should follow it. But no, I wouldn't say we should allow these people to do the mud people thing. I don't know what you're saying.
Great.
Like,
so then why is discrimination against gay individuals okay in your worldview?
Because I share overlapping religious sentiments with some of these people who run these institutions. Yeah, like doctrinally, like and so I think again in a pluralistic society, I don't want these people making laws that these gay people shouldn't exist and shouldn't be able to have relationships and everything else. I want them to be able to have their institutions, just like I want the Muslim person to be able to say, no, actually, I get to exist in my institution and I get to do what I want. I get to have my laws and my rules and that's fine. And you don't belong here unless you accept those and you abide by them. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I like pluralism. It's nice.
Can I ask you a
Wait,
question?
hold on. So if they justified this discrimination with religion, like, so if we went back in time 42 years, and with the Mormon Church saying that black people have the mark of Cain,
Right,
and
which I mean,
they're,
like,
they're,
again,
therefore can't be Mormons,
Bob
right?
Jones and some
Like-
other places had similar views that I think are
We
important.
don't
I
need
think
to go to
wrong,
Bob
though.
Jones. Like, we say, like, the Mormon Church,
Yeah.
like 40 years ago, they
Yeah.
didn't allow most black people in because they thought they had the mark of Cain. And so if
Mhm.
we had a Mormon university like
That's
this,
not true. They
today,
did allow them in. They just didn't
come
allow them to
on.
hold the priesthood. It's a difference.
Oh.
okay, yeah, they didn't want the blacks having priesthood. I understand.
World's better.
So,
I mean, if there's a
So to say-
substantive
so to-
There is a
Please.
difference.
okay, yeah, that's great. So if one of these universities, right, let's say they have a theology course or something where people are
Mhm.
learning things that would push them toward priesthood or prepare them for priesthood, and they didn't allow blacks into that because they didn't want blacks to become priests within their religion, right? Would this be okay because they're justifying this with religion and not with, like, your mud people or your subhuman?
I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say again, no, because I think that's wrong. Like what you're asking me now is like to dig into like what I think theologically and does my theology line up with theirs, and it doesn't, because I think that's wrong and bad. So but I'm not trying to adjudicate this through the lens of my theology. I'm not trying to say, well, I'm right, so everybody gets to do what I think is good and right, and that's what the law should be. I'm saying we have ways to deal with this if you guys think it should change.
So I mean, I can if I can maybe ask a clarifying question
So
to you,
I
Chris.
just
Yeah,
and
go
then
ahead.
I'm gonna say this and then y'all go straight to you, right? Like, so what I'm asking is not for your moral framework, right? I'm asking for the legal framework that you want, and those things are two separate things. Those aren't synonymous, right?
Okay.
Like,
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So,
because I can feel I feel all kinds of ways about certain things morally, right? I have
Sure.
moral convictions, but I can recognize that within a legal
It took him like
context, those
15
things don't
minutes
work,
to get
right?
to this
let me
point,
tell you what
and now
legal
he thinks it's
framework I
his
want.
point.
I want a world where we
Oh my
find a
God.
magic way to balance the free exercise of religion and our internal feeling that some forms of discrimination are really bad and wrong and we shouldn't do them. We haven't found a great way to do that yet. This one is bad, and I'm saying we should change it. But I don't have a perfect answer for you. So something that I'll point you to, though, came out last month, a book by Vincent Philip Munoz at Notre Dame. It's a Catholic school, right? But it's a book called Religious Liberty and the American Founding, and he digs into basically the whole argument about originalism, blah blah blah, and he thinks basically everybody's wrong. The conservatives are wrong, the Scalias and the whatevers over here are wrong, and the progressives are wrong. Really, this is a natural rights thing, and he goes through and says, like, case by case, let's talk about the things we're arguing about now. Let's talk about religious exceptions. That doesn't seem to fit with the framework that he develops. I think it's a really compelling argument. It's a great book, just came out, University of Chicago Press. If you want a PDF, I can send it to you. Okay, I found it compelling. I'm still thinking about it and chewing it over. I think what we're dealing with right now is the fact that in a pluralistic society, we're constantly having to balance between the fact that we have free association and free speech and free exercise of religion, which all imply in some way some ability to discriminate, and this feeling that, like, actually we should allow people to be free from other people's discrimination and domination over them. How do we balance those things? It's really fucking hard. So yeah, I don't have a perfect answer. I'm sorry.
It's not that hard. You just
I'm not
follow
an ANCAP.
natural law.
It's hard if you're not an ANCAP.
Yeah, they don't. Okay.
If you try to be logical about morality as opposed to just
Corey, you want to
holding
ask?
paradoxes and contradictions.
Yeah, just so I am somewhat interested in your morality, Eucharist, and also from what I think I take your point in terms of, like, this seems to be sort of like you take issue with, like, the policy, and, like, the policy should be, like, legislatively changed. But just to maybe ask a clarifying question to,
Sure.
at least for me, understand your morality better. If you were to, whatever, open or start a church of your own, would you yourself allow same-sex marriage in your own church?
A church of my I wouldn't start a church of my own because my
I
theology
know.
precludes that. So that's
Okay.
so I can't. It's an unanswerable question.
Okay, I'll take that answer.
So at the end of the day, right? At the end of
But
the
I
day, we have
understand
to,
the crime's frustration.
yeah. At the end of the day, when it comes down to it, right? We have to decide as a country, as a nation, what we are willing to let the federal government decide for us or not. And I personally do not want the federal government to be able to tell me what higher education place, because again, it's higher education. We do not consider that a right in this country to have higher education. Whether you think we should or should not, it is not currently considered a right. And there is, I think, sorts of types of discrimination that we would be rightfully so, and that the government should step in against. if BYU or any other university was saying no black people or no gay people, right? We don't allow them. I think that's where I would have less of a problem with the federal government staying in. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is due to their religious preferences, they have said we do not allow these sorts of activities to be had, which, yes, are discriminatory against the LGBTQ community. But they are still, if they abide by those rules, are allowed in. And I think that
Why
is
is the I guess what I don't understand is like, why is the entry like the line for you? So they're letting them in, but once they're in, they're saying, hey, you have to pretend you're not gay, or you need to hide your gayness, or whatever the fuck. Like if
You
they
don't
told a
have-
trans person, if you told a trans person, hey, yeah, while you're here on campus, you need to, we're going to use your, your born pronouns, and you
Sure.
can't present as anything but the sex that you were born, etc.
I don't think
Like,
they're saying
I
that,
think
though,
it's-
are they?
Oh no, but I'm asking you, right? So if they did,
kind
Some
of,
of
yeah.
them are. Some
Yeah.
of them
Are they?
are.
I've
Some
got
of them,
nothing.
they're.
This was the
They're
George
that,
Fox
like,
University exemption.
Elizabeth-
that was a student.
I think
was a,
I can't remember. It was Elizabeth something, but she was basically told that like she needed to dress more feminine at the school in order
Yeah.
to follow the honor
because they
conduct.
don't
Okay,
accept they don't
noted.
accept the transness,
Carry
right? So like,
on with your question.
okay, so I would think that you would still think that's a problem, right? And it seems like effectively that's what's being done to gay and lesbian students here.
I don't. I think that the federal government should not be able to tell a university that they can't do that. And while I find it abhorrent, I think that when we allow the federal government to say, "Hey, no, if our," again, we're talking about private universities here, not public. My stance is different for this, but simply because the students who are going to these universities are all choosing to go to these universities, right? They're receiving the money and then choosing to use that money. No one is being forced into these universities. I think that's what makes the federal government should be able to stay out of it. So if a trans individual
Wait,
wants to
but-
live by the precepts that this whatever crazy school says, hey, if you come here, you have to do these things or live this way if you want to be here. I think that the federal government has no business telling them they can't do that.
Do you think people should be able to use like federal money toward educational institutions that are not accredited?
You know what? I don't know. I can't give you an answer on
Don't
that. I
know?
don't know the I don't know the
if I-
accreditation process well enough to give you an educated answer on that, because I don't know the accreditation process, what steps are taken, how they make these determinations. So I can't give you an actual answer. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess you don't really need to know the actual steps to know what I'm asking, right? Which is, hey, this school hasn't been given either state or federal stamp of approval as an educational institution, right? So given that's the case, if I've set something up in my garage somewhere, like, hey, I'm having students come in here and I'm teaching them whatever, right? Why shouldn't the federal government be able to say, hey, actually, we don't consider that to be a school that we want to be sending our money to. We don't consider this to be a real or like a legitimate educational institution. So given that's the case, we're not going to let you use our money toward that thing. Like, why is that okay, but it's not okay to say that, hey,
it's okay to have certain standards, right? That you want.
why
your
can't the
money.
standard be, hey, we're not
But
going to
other standards- just let me finish answering your
support
question. I guess I can
support
answer your
schools that are
question.
discriminatory?
Let me know when you're ready for me to answer my question.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm just gonna add on to it a little bit that you can answer. Right. So you agree that there can be standards, right? So that's good. But why can't a standard that the federal government puts in place be that we're not going to use federal funds towards schools that are openly discriminatory?
Because that implies ideology, and one of the standards is the ideology of the school comes into play, not the professional, or not professionalism is the right word, but not the what is a good word? Expertise. I'm not sure the word I want here, but there is a substantive difference, right? And this is why I can't give you the proper answer, because I don't know the processes for accreditation, right? But because why they
I
draw
think the word you're
lines
searching
they
was
do-
academic standards.
academic standards, thank you. But why they draw the lines they do is important. It does matter to me, because I think that once you open that door for when you say that an institution, keep in mind, a private institution has to allow all of these behaviors, then we get into some really dicey territory, and I want private.
I don't think it's that dicey.
I value private institutions' ability to say no, because we are a a religious institution, or because we want a drug-free institution that if you are on our campus, you can't drink alcohol. I think that's a great one that should be allowed, for example. And when you open up that door to different behaviors, it gives the federal government to say, no, actually, you're discriminating against people who smoke, or you're discriminating against people who drink, or you're discriminating against people who engage in these other behaviors that you, as a religious institution, find personally offensive. Again, I think no, we don't let the federal government.
That's
do that.
ridiculous. Like, okay, but why is this like a? I don't understand. Like, genuinely, why you would think this is an issue? Because this is something that already happens, right? So if you're like, for example, if you have like a federal contractor or subcontractor, that federal money comes with strings attached and requirements attached to it, right? It could be just that the workplace is like vaccinated, right? And they're remaining in compliance in that way.
I was against the mandates for vaccines.
So given that these are private institutions, but they are interfacing with and accepting federal money, right? What is the issue with it saying, hey, if you'd like to move out of the fully private status and start accepting federal money and federal loans, right? You need to do this stuff, right?
Because
that seems
the
totally
way
fair.
that they're accepting this federal money is through the student. And so that matters, right? Because you are saying to the student.
I'm just asking.
Sure.
No. So there's two answers to this question. The first one, which is the status response, right, is that you have a First Amendment, the right of free speech, which enshrines the right of your religion as well. And this is obviously like a religious faith issue. And that's why there is a religious exemption to Title IX, is because of those First Amendment protections. So that's the easy answer, is that the difference here is that they have certain religious values at their institution that they wish to enshrine in their students and population, and to forcibly strong arm them away from that is a violation of their First Amendment rights. The real answer is that the government's involvement in this at all is the source of the conflict. And Doobie, you point out an excellent point, which is that how we choose to attach things to this money, which is taxed and involuntarily taken from American citizens and from businesses. You know, close to 50% of all of our wealth is stolen from us by the state. How we choose to use that money has arbitrary lines of what we can do to force you to accept certain things that the government believes. And the government is obviously doesn't have any rights, but we're treating it like it does. Like it is this arbiter, and that because we all get to vote, we have this plurality, and we have this beautiful system where we can just force minorities of people that disagree with us to do what it is that we want to do. And so that's the source of the conflict. If we didn't have a federal student loan program and Pell Grants and all these other things, we would have much higher education standards. We would have much more money to spend. Banks would be able to give out much better loans that were targeted towards the success of the degree that you're in. So it'd be easier, for example, if you had good grades to get an engineering degree than, let's say, get a psychology, sociology degree. But if you had amazing grades, they would probably give you those loans because they'd be like, you're probably going to achieve some relative success.
At the end of the day, if you
those
don't
programs
go
are attached there. Right.
If they don't have a standards you want to obey, don't go there. That's it. It's not like there's a dearth of colleges, right? There's thousands. There's thousands of colleges to choose from. And with the advent of online classes, it's easier than ever to get a college that will adhere to whatever belief system or structure you wish to have. And I think that's a good thing, the freedom of choice here. And when we start putting limits on people's choices, when it comes to their belief systems, I don't like it.
Wait,
go ahead.
So, well, I'm wondering if this is like, if you draw like a line around the educational system, because what if it's just like a store or a restaurant or something, right? And they don't want the gays in their store, or they don't want black people in the store, or whatever.
PDAs in their store, they're free to enforce that.
No, not just PDAs. They don't want trans people to enter the store. They don't want gay people to enter the store. Like, why is being able to set your foot across the threshold, okay, like the line at which, so long as they allow you to set your foot in the store, it's okay for them to discriminate? Like, why is that like? That doesn't make any sense. Like, what if you had a store that was charging people more? What if you had a store that was charging people more on the basis of their skin color? Right? Would that be okay?
No, of course not. right? Of course.
That's
not.
my
Why?
position, not Wick's position.
I'm sorry. Like I think that it's just
Like, that's
it's wild to
stupid,
me that
Doobie.
we can't distinguish between a business and an organization or an institution with a mission and a goal and values like that. Like the idea that
the
like,
educational
we can't
system
draw
is the mission
someone-
is to make money.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, so
Education in the United
it's the
States
same
is
thing.
a business. I would argue
No,
it's a business.
no, education. No.
Yes,
This is
don't do
this
this
is
hoity-toity
this is
shit. It's a
pure,
business.
like liberal brain nonsense, deficient view of education. No, it's silly. It's absolutely silly. That you
I
like
agree.
why?
So-
why
so
no,
the
hang on, no.
business
Why do
is
schools?
to-
Why do
is to
schools
bring-
spend so much time selling their values, their public investment in their community? This is not just like it's not just a business. This isn't just a product that I'm selling at a farmer's market. Okay, this is far thicker than that. There's a reason. There's cults and religion around your schools and chants and songs. You know, like it's absolute silliness to be unable to distinguish between the burger shop down the street and the institution that's been in your town for
This
300 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
this
like-
conflation of
no,
terms.
no, this is
Everything's a
stupid.
business. Everything.
Hold on. So if you look, any
business,
if any business has a fucking mission statement. Like if I just look up Starbucks, right? Their mission statement, their goal, right, in their business is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time, right? And they do lots of charity within the communities to push
Beautiful.
this kind of
Absolutely
Right,
beautiful.
So I don't know. So if they can say, hey, actually, yeah, we're not just about making money.
So,
We wanna
Doobie,
give
are
back to
you
the
the
community.
capitalist
We
here
wanna-
who's saying
we
there's
wanna
no
nurture the
difference
human
between
spirit.
between a capitalist institution and a provision of a public good? Are you the one who's making that argument? That there's no difference between me selling a fucking commercial product
This
and
is
providing a
private
public good,
university.
a civic
This is a
good?
This is a private university, right? So what a civic good or
Private
a public
universities
good
have always
is
been
like,
considered part of the service of the
Oh
public
my
good.
God.
We've always funded private universities with
fucking-
state
that's
money. We always
ridiculous.
have.
they're
We always
money-making
have. We always will.
institutions. No, that's stupid. They're
No, that's not-
money-making
that's not-
institutions.
Okay, some of them are now. They're hedge funds with a veneer of education,
Their
but that's
goal-
not the
okay.
point of the school.
The difference
We
between
can
the difference
buy into
between
their marketing and the idea that they have like this grander mission that they're trying to pursue, just like any other business has that page on their website.
There's a substantive
Right, but the
difference
reality
between
is,
education and commercial
that
product.
they're a business, and the way that they make the money is educating people. That's it.
the difference
It's
between
not.
you don't have to make
Starbucks,
money.
the
They're
difference,
nonprofit.
It's
the
not.
difference,
Most
the
of them.
difference between Starbucks and a university, right, is that when you go to Starbucks, you're there for an instant and brief amount of time, right? All Starbucks is doing is selling you a cup of coffee and like a cake pop, or possibly a place for you to sit down and write your screenplay that no one's ever going to look at, right? Like that's what Starbucks is offering you. When you are going to a university, you are taking, and people don't want to accept it, but let's be fucking honest, anybody over the age of 30 knows that an 18-year-old's a goddamn child, right? That you're taking your fucking kids, your adult kids, but kids nevertheless, and you're taking them for likely more than 3 years, right? Possibly much longer than that, depending on whether or not you got a Van Wilder situation with your kid, right? And so, yes, they are selling a product as a business. That is part of what they're doing. And plenty of businesses have values and goals in the ways that they sell their products. Hospitals are a great example of this, where you have private hospitals, you have public hospitals, you have Catholic hospitals that have specific visions and things that they want to do. But the difference is the amount of time that you spend with them. And because of that, the amount of power that they have to shape you.
It's
And the
not the
product
amount
that
of
they're
time.
selling, the product that they're selling is education and how successful that education is going to be.
It's not.
Like,
no,
you're giving it
It's
this
the
hallowed
goal
fucking
isn't selling a
spiritual
product.
shit and not fucking backing it up with anything other than your fifis, that it's this beautiful fucking hallowed thing. It's not.
No.
It's just
No,
a
no, what is-
longer
no,
business that sells a product.
What is the end? What is the end goal of a hospital? What's the point? Is it provision of is it just making money? It's never been that. It's never been that. That's why so many of them are nonprofits.
It absolutely is
It's done voluntarily. That's ridiculous.
It
That's not
depends on the
point.
hospital.
And these nonprofits pay their
Promotion
doctors
of health.
hundreds of
It's
thousands of
healing,
dollars.
right? There's something different than just me selling you a cup of coffee. The end
No.
goal of Starbucks is for you to get your coffee and for me to get my money. The end goal of education
And future
is the
returns.
inculcation of virtue. Okay, you guys have just
It's
this like
ridiculous.
fundamentally deficient view of health and
No,
economics.
You're fucking no. You're fucking.
By this line of reasoning,
No,
we shouldn't
this
believe
is
that
your
Andrew
own
Tate's
fucking-
Hustler University is just like a fucking pyramid scheme
Eucharist.
because he has his whole mission statement about making strong men
No,
and
okay,
helping
I'm
men do
not-
better in
No,
their lives.
Eucharist,
And because he's
you've
pushing this
bought
idea
your
as
own
the end
bullshit.
goal of his fucking pyramid scheme.
I'm asking what is the end? I'm asking what is the end goal? What is the goal of the thing?
For
that you
Hustler
are
University,
doing?
it's to make strong men who can do well in the world.
No,
right?
the goal of
To
Hustler
better
University
themselves.
is to make Andrew Tate rich. Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Like,
no, that's not what it says on his website. That's not what it says on his website.
Well, I don't. Yeah.
His website is all about building up men, teaching men how to be stronger, successful,
Okay.
et cetera, et cetera.
All right.
Right?
All
Like,
right,
what are you
cool.
talking about?
So I
That's-
agree
that's
with
all
your
businesses.
sentiment of
It's
like
stupid.
education should be viewed as a public good, which is why I'm all for like pretty much the universal access to higher education. But like I'm an outsider, I'm a Canadian, but to Doobie's point, it seems to me as an outsider, and it seems like Doobie as an American sort of backs this up. Like it seems like education is run, just like healthcare is run as a pretty much largely for profit, as in like
It's not.
it-
No,
it
it's
seems-
not.
it
Most
seems
of them are
almost
nonprofits. For-profit
you-
universities are the exception, not the rule. That's not.
You-
It's just not true.
Like
I-
BYU, for example, I can give you some insight, right, into BYU University. It is funded by the church. It in of itself, I'm not sure if it's profitable, but it's never like it's turned down public funding. When the COVID crisis hit, for example, the state voted to give it $32 million. It didn't take a damn cent of that because it said, no, we are not taking this money from the government because of the strings attached to it, right? Because it was a direct thing. And so if it was just for profit, it absolutely would have taken all that money, right? Absolutely, 100%.
Eucharist, no, listen.
Different.
Listen, I'm gonna like listen real quick.
You keep talking, right? We understand your point. State bad. Got it. Okay, moving on.
That's not my point. I thought you were done because you finished your statement. I'll let you continue. I'm my bad, dude.
Please. It's okay. But when it comes down to it, right? Like this idea that Eucharist is trying to get across, which is a difficult one to get across, to be quite frank with you, is that this idea of it's all capitalism when it comes to the American education system isn't necessarily true. In some cases, absolutely it is. There are some scam universities out there. There are some universities out there who are absolute, like Hustler U and stuff, just money grabs. But in many cases, a lot of these have higher mission statements, things that they are trying to do, and communities that they are trying to get, services they are trying to provide that have nothing to do with the capitalist motivations. And that's
let me just interject here, right? Because the problem is that it seems like Eucharist and maybe myself, even other people, are creating this like black and white scenario, right? The argument that you've made for the university could be made about almost essentially any business. So let me give you an example. I have an autistic son, right? I have an idea for something that like I might want to patent, right? Something that I kind of made myself as a father for my autistic son that really helped him, right? I make a business, but the reason I make the business isn't purely profit-based. It's also because I believe that this is a product that will help people and will help autistic parents of autistic children have a better life and be able to have a better situation and help that situation. I actually have a product in mind. I'm obviously not going to say that helps autistic kids sleep. Right? Now, what am I doing? Am I purely motivated by profit in that regard? Well, I'm a competing business. I have to be motivated by profit, just like universities have to be motivated by profit, just like nonprofit organizations have to be motivated by the fact that they're a competing business. So they have to sell themselves. They have to market themselves. They have to have a good return on the money that people give them. They operate much the same way. And so this idea that like the education system is somehow magically different from business is a very black and white way of ascribing just like the greedy capitalist is there for the sole profit incentive, but the university is this hallowed system of like inculcating your values, when the fact of the matter is that all businesses want to inculcate values. They all have their own goals.
First of all, Eucharist, you like tossing out like non-for-profit hospitals as if these organizations are somehow better in the way they treat their patients or the way they operate or anything like that. Non-for-profit just means that you can get off without paying local property taxes, right? Like that's what that means basically. the government treats you
Yeah,
as a
sometimes,
charity. You're not a fucking charity. Like, they don't operate like a charity, and in fact, they can be even more expensive than a for-profit hospital. All these things are true, right? Like,
I'm saying, Prime, I don't have the time to go at length and talk about the differences between different business models and markets for hospitals and all these things. I am saying that you have a deficient view of medicine if you think that the provision of medicine is the same thing as the provision of a pure good or service for an exchange of money. It's ridiculous. You need something higher than that aims at health and wellness. These are things that matter to a hospital system and matter to medicine. Okay? So you can critique the way the system currently works.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Correct.
No, but you have a deficient understanding of how medicine actually works in this nation.
I
right?
don't.
Maybe
actually.
in Canada.
Maybe
in Canada, they have a better view.
Are you calling him the Canadian slur? Prime? Wow, I thought that.
I'm saying
these issues if I can't actually explain my point.
I'm saying in Canada, maybe they actually feel that way. Not here in America. Not the way we've designed our system. That's not the case. Right? We've given them incentive models that make it so that that money matters. Sure, yes, there are people who are within the medical system who feel the way you feel, right? Feel that it's the helping people comes first, no matter what organization they might be a part of. They're there for that particular reason. I'm talking about the management, and I think it's where other people are trying to get.
It's not even different. Sorry.
Yes,
it's not even different with socialized medicine.
Criticisms of the management. Like I'm fine to do that. I'm saying what we were just hearing was this argument that it is no different than any other business. It's like a Starbucks, but you're in there for longer. That's bullshit. It's wrong. It's false.
It isn't any different. Not in terms
we can have a whole separate argument about this. Fine. Like I'll do that. I'll one-on-one anybody about this. But it's bullshit. It's nonsense. I can't. I can't explain this.
Eucharist.
I can't explain it.
You can't explain it, but it just is.
There's five people fucking talking over me, Scott. If you'd like me to explain for an hour, I can. We can talk about this.
If you need an hour to explain a substantive difference, then you have a shit argument.
I just explained the substantive difference. It's in fundamental ends, like aiming at health, aiming at money acquisition, and aiming at the inculcation of virtue are fundamentally fucking different things, Scott.
And I just gave you an example of how businesses aim at a fundamental virtue.
The incentive structures are also different.
We'll talk about this sometime. Like I'd love to talk to any of you about this sometime.
And that there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of meat. There's a lot of foundations you need to build in order to have a proper conversation, and that's just going to be impossible to do in the time frame we have and with the environment.
No, it's not. This is a cop out.
Yeah,
it just seems like you guys read the mission statement for college, just like any business has a mission statement where they fluff themselves up, but you guys actually believe the college mission statement. Like it's ridiculous.
No, it's just. No. All right. Well, Eucharist wants to move on. He'll take that L and pass it on to another time, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go make a pot of coffee.
No, I just I'll just reiterate my major point here, and the reason that this became a discussion is there are reasons, right, that I think that it's okay when the government says you cannot discriminate to a business than a private institution like a church, a university, or a home, right? There are fundamental differences between how we view these things in institutions in America, and there's a fundamental difference in their purpose. And I think that is why I'm okay in one instance of saying, yes, if you go to the grocery store, you shouldn't be able to turn away someone for simply being a certain way. And again, in this university, in the instance we're talking about, no one is being turned away because they are gay. They are being turned away, or they have to live by a certain code of behavior, and there's a fundamental difference there. That's all.
No, sorry, don't give me that. That's bullshit. That's Catholic Church nonsense, right? And it's like, oh, we hate the sin, not the sinner. Did you accept that when the Catholic Church said that?
Do you think
nonsense?
there is no difference, though? You could say both are bad.
Effectively
I agree
none.
with you.
Effectively none.
I 100% disagree. 100% disagree.
Yeah,
right.
Effectively none.
There are places I can go.
And as we saw from decades of well, I'm not sure if it's decades. I'm not sure how long that regime lasted, or maybe they're still doing it. I don't know, whatever. But like you talk to people who were gay and within the Catholic Church, they'll tell you that encouraged that level of hatred against them. It encouraged their discrimination. It said that these people were wrong, right? Like, sure, you can have these urges, but like it becomes a fucking pedophile conversation all over again, right? Yeah, well, it's okay, you have these urges, but doing them is abhorrent, right? Like, and which is, I mean, in terms of pedophiles, that's the case, right? But like, I'm saying that like it made them feel that way, but no, it made them feel that way, right? And do you think that a gay person should feel that way? In terms of, should they feel like should they be stigmatized like pedophile behavior?
But none of these people are being forced to go to this institution. No one is being forced to sign up for it. They are choosing. They are making this choice to put themselves in this environment. They're not children.
First of all, no one should go to Brigham Young University. It's a disgusting place.
But if they want to,
or Brown Jones University, or Liberty University, I know it's just utterly disgusting. I would encourage nobody to go there. Like, in fact, the reason why I read that article, the first article in the first place, is because I was baffled. Like, why is a gay person, this lesbian woman, why as a lesbian would you go there? I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, so that's why I asked the question, like, is there pressure? Like, how free is someone who's growing up in a Mormon community, like, actually voluntarily going?
Yeah, but further, I think most of us here would probably agree that this college can exist as a private college. The issue comes in when they're taking public money, when they're taking federal
fully
loans.
private. I personally have, like, if in fact that's where, like, I'm unsure of, like, how much funding they get from.
What you're saying in this case, what you and Dewey are both saying here, is that someone who gets a federal loan, a federal or a GI Bill, goes to the military, right, does their service, serves honorably, and chooses and gets their.
I think we're about to go on to the next topic soon.
You are saying that they cannot choose.
We should be doing drama streaming here soon enough, boys.
To say, I want to go to BYU because I've.
But thanks to the raid, I appreciate it, Ranger Rogue.
Use that money toward a college, quote unquote, that hasn't been accredited. Yeah, of course.
And is that the only form of, like, federal funding or, like, whatever public money that?
No, there's federal loans, right? There's federal loans. There's other forms of federal, like, subsidies. But as far as I could understand, in my brief amount of research in this, looking this up, there are two ways that BYU gets federal money, and only two ways, right? The first one is through GI Bills, federal loans, things attached to the student, and the second is when they partner with public universities for building, like the example I saw was an Asian language center.
Yeah, so, like, based off of my understanding, given the fact that like
they're as private as you can be in the U.S.
Right? Yeah, you can't get more private, right?
But it seems like they've to Eucharist, what alluded to earlier, like, they applied for an exemption, and so as a result of that exemption, like, they're able to, like, implement these policies. Like, in my mind, I could be wrong, but in my mind, the very fact that they are applying for this exemption, like, sort of hints to me that they are, like, in some sense operating on some public funds, and therefore they cannot have
no. Title IX applies, like, even if a college wasn't for example, wasn't taking any federal student loan money or Pell Grant money or research grant money and never partnered with other universities to do anything, Title IX as a law would still apply to them, right?
Okay.
And so because that law applies, they're saying, hey, we're a religious institution. We want to file under 34 statute 106.112 for religious exemption from some of the rules of Title IX based off of our religious freedom.
Yeah. Well, I would just be.
So it's an exemption from state law and pleading for the First Amendment.
Well, we can get into that, but that's a separate
this, Corey. Like, when you create this mechanism, when you say that the government, the federal government, the state can have, like, a say in what you can think or do in your private institutions, your clubs, your home, right? And if you don't want certain activities in your home or in your church or in your school, your private school, to be very clear, you go down dangerous paths. And as soon as the bad guys get the people who have substantive differences morally than you or I, right? Because again, like I think it's abhorrent what BYU does in their forms of discrimination. I want to be very clear. Perhaps I haven't been clear enough with that today, but I want to be very clear that personally, I find it abhorrent. I didn't go to BYU because I think that their policies are too restrictive, not just to gay people, but just to freedom in general. So that's one of the big reasons I didn't go there, and I chose not to use my GI Bill to go there.
You don't want to get caught drinking a cup of Joe on BYU campus.
Getting coffee, you get in just as much. I don't know about just as much trouble.
Maybe, yeah, not just as much trouble, but you're getting in trouble for drinking coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of like religious restrictions in there I didn't want to be a part of. But see, I think it's okay to allow them to make those discriminations, because when I make a club or an institution or something which says, hey, I don't want people who believe in an ethno-state to be able to preach or spread their rhetoric within my institution, I don't want the government to say I have to let them. And there are definitely, we're in a position right now where if certain parties get in charge, that is a real possibility. It's not hyperbole. And so we have to keep this mechanism out of the federal government's hands, because we don't want the federal government to be able to force their bigotry on us.
Now, if you could just take that logic to all of the government, I'd be super happy, Wick. If you could just take that everywhere, you'd be right with me.
Yeah, so that was actually it. So first off, I think you're like super. I think you're like in super hyperbolic territory. I think you're massively overstating how big an issue like ethno-staters are in the U.S. First off, secondly, I think that to Scott's point, if you were to apply this logic to like anything else, you get to the point where you're effectively arguing that we can't have laws because someone bad might come into power and make bad laws.
I got it.
Of course. So like. So like I think like we need laws.
That's not what he's saying at all. I don't think. I think he's.
It seems like that logic will lead us directly there.
There's certain ways of administering law that are more subject to the whims of an arbitrary dictator or bureaucrat, right? So if we that's what checks and balances exist for. Yes, we can have laws, and somebody else could make a bad law down the road. But if you put like a supreme executive power in the hands of some unelected bureaucrat, you're gonna have a bad time when the next unelected bureaucrat is the person.
Nobody's arguing that.
But
nobody's arguing about putting supreme unelected power in the hands of
that's what we're talking about with the DOE. That's what we're talking about with these exceptions. That's how they're adjudicated. And that's exactly what Wick is talking about. He's not saying don't make a law because it could be abused. He's saying there are certain types of law that are more likely to be abused than others. And we should probably stop handing the most important things that you guys all clearly care about, like discrimination, to the ones that are more likely to be abused.
I mean, the right answer is just to abolish the Department of Education. We won't have these fucking problems.
God.
All right. So we'll we'll have to move on.
All of you laughing just lack imagination.
I might want to take you, Chris, up on the state that debate on the state of healthcare and how that actually works.
Prime, I don't want to talk to you about the state of healthcare. I want to talk about how healthcare fundamentally as a concept in an institution is different than a Starbucks. I want to talk about how the provision of education, the reason we're all fighting about this is because Scott thinks that the Marxists are indoctrinating our K-12 kids, and you, Prime, think our consciousness should be heightened in our schools and we should be made aware of social justice issues. You all clearly think that education is not just the provision of fucking coffee. So like that's all I'm saying. Is that like this
no.
consequential than what we're trying to strip it down. We're doing nothing buttery. This is nothing but a business that you hang out in for a long time, and that's bullshit.
Hold on. Okay. Sorry, that maybe if that's what you understood my understanding of this thing, then no. Like I in fact I started to try to make that distinction, right? I talked before and I got constantly interrupted, so I don't know if anyone understands what my point might have been. But I talked about how like schools are important because of their place in our society, and that
should be
trying
a
to
public
educate
good.
and socialize. Yeah, exactly, right. Like I tried to make that distinction. I understand there's a difference there, that it's not just the same as a Starbucks. Great, but but in the terms of their administration, and in terms of like how management treats like its clients or customers, everyone to look at a student, is that like I think that there are a lot of parallels there, a lot of unmistakable parallels.
It's
Yeah, there-
commodified
I just
to
say-
Starbucks.
the
I just-
Starbucks
well,
comparison.
I was
it's more-
mentioned
it's more
real
like
quick,
a
but
karate dojo.
I was mentioned,
basically.
so real quick. I just want to say, yeah, my issue here is that a human rights violation is a human rights violation, period.
Sure.
It doesn't matter if it's in the form of education or business. When you're violating human rights, it's wrong, period.
All right. So let's continue. Thanks all for that. We're gonna continue on. We're gonna go to our next topic. If you've been enjoying this content, you've been enjoying us yelling back and forth.
All right, boys, it's drama time.
Hit that follow button and make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do this all the time. Expert for social and chat. For our social media, we got Twitter, Discord, TikTok, and YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And yeah, so we're gonna move on. Trying to set something up. Okay. Hang on a second. All right. So we're gonna have a separate. We are going to have a separate topic. We have a new person will be joining us.
A guest star.
Oh yeah, a guest star. Okay. So let's get started. Hey, Sonia, can you hear me?
Hello.
The name.
Hey, thanks for being here, friend. Okay. So we are going to be discussing.
Oh, get it out.
Oh, first of all, before we do that, did you want to introduce yourself, Zonia?
Spit it out,
Yeah,
dog.
just I don't know. You all know who I am, so I'm just jumping in here to last minute for this very interesting topic. Should get a little spicy, I'm sure.
Okay, great. Topic 2. Cloudflare, the ISP and security provider, has taken down Kiwi Farms. Kiwi is an online forum known for its extreme far-right views and anti-trans harassment campaigns. Keffals has been their latest victim, but she mounted successful mobilization to pressure Cloudflare to take action. Was this the right move? Should Kiwi have been taken down for this level of harassment? Is it fundamentally different for an infrastructure provider like Cloudflare to take action rather than a platform like Facebook? And should Telegram allow Kiwi refugees to have safe harbor on their service? So yeah, I think most of you already know what's been happening with Keffals. Thank you for 100 bits. I think most of you already know, but Keffals is a trans individual who has been suffering a severe amount of harassment, including doxing and swatting attempts to her, and she has seen apparently a lot of this abuse is coming from Kiwi Farms, and so she, which is a disgusting place to be, really, a troll farm, and she mounted a campaign, and she basically got them taken down. There might be a way for them to get back up and running, but at least for now, they're taken down. So is this okay? Is this a line that we want in which the infrastructure providers, who are different from platform providers like Facebook? I mean, these people provide literally the physical servers and the web hosting capabilities. If they're taking action, is that action any different? So we'll go around. We'll ask people. Start with Wick.
Yeah, so this is an interesting case, right? Cloudflare, one of the services that they do provide, as well as hosting, is they provide protection against DDoS attacks and other sort of assaults on service and things like that. So during this campaign, one of the things that was asked by the hashtag Drop Kiwi Farms people is for Cloudflare to look away while they DDoS these people into oblivion and things like that. I understand the sentiment, right? But Cloudflare put out a statement saying that if they were to do that, it's like asking the firefighters not to respond when Bigot's house is on fire, or someone we find morally reprehensible reprehensible is a victim of arson. There's dangers to that. One of the dangers that they pointed out is that when they have dropped people from their service in the past, and they mentioned 2 examples of when they did, it led to them receiving increased pressure to also lower their services and drop the services of human rights advocacy groups. And this is something that gave them a lot of pause and caused them to change their policy. We've seen this with services like Facebook. Whenever their censorship tools are used in order to target human rights groups in authoritarian countries, right? And this is a real pressure that they faced. They did release a second statement in which they did drop them ostensibly, and I can only go by their word here, because of an imminent threat to human life and safety because of an escalation that occurred. I'm not exactly sure what specific thing they were referring to there, but in that statement, they also acknowledged that it was very possible that in taking this action, they have actually escalated and made the situation worse. But it was a very gray area. Do I think they should have dropped Kiwi Farms? Not for the first reason, but yes, for the second reason. Imminent threats and emergencies like that, yes, reducing service. And to be clear, Kiwi Farms was down for 20 minutes. It's back up now. It's on a much less stable provider, but it's still being hosted by Russian servers and things like that.
They went back down again a few hours ago, and they've been down since.
Fair enough. It's an ongoing situation, but it's not gone away. And to act like this is the only site that has done this or doing this, and that there aren't
thank you for celebrating September.
Groups and discords and
right?
stuff that purposely
Subs are actually cheaper right now.
Kai clips and other things for swatting and doxing is just silly.
If you want to donate,
swatting and doxing shouldn't
now's the time to do it. I appreciate it.
That's my statement.
Okay, that's a long statement. That was a really long statement, but we appreciate and love you, Wick, right? Let's go to the loss of here means also a loss of a sense of time. All right, let's go to Corey.
Yeah, well, so I agree with your last sentiment, Wick, of like swatting and doxing pretty much should never be done, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, and should not be on the table as a tactic, regardless. So I'm not super familiar with Cloudflare, and I'm even less familiar with Kiwi Farms. I just did, sort of a casual research. So I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert, but as you sort of alluded to, Prime, it seems like Kiwi Farms is pretty much like explicitly devoted to like harassing people, or pretty much just like pretty much a pretty abhorrent overall whatever platform or forum, like dedicated to targeting people that they just don't happen to like. And again, based off of my sort of casual research, like there appears to be like a number of, suicides. There appears to be a body count associated with Kiwi Farms. Whether directly linked, I guess it's arguable, but there appears to be an association between some people taking their life and Kiwi Farms and the harassment that they receive from Kiwi Farms. And so operating under the assumption, and this might be a false assumption, that Cloudflare is pretty much a private entity. I don't know for sure that it is, but it seems like it is. If in fact that it is a private entity, then I see no problem with them pretty much removing Kiwi Farms from their platform or whatever their content distribution methods, because I think that, as far as I can tell, they have every right to do that. I sort of liken this to like there was the case of like the individual, I think their name was like Conrad Roy. They took their life as a result of like their ex-girlfriend's harassment. I think their name was like Linda Carter or something like that. I could be mistaken, but either way, I think that's a very interesting case of like, as a result, like this person was held accountable of like they pretty much like harassed their ex-boyfriend to the point of like taking their life, and this person was held accountable. I see no reason why
that girl was wild.
Accountable for behavior like this. I'll end it there for now.
Okay, please, you're Chris.
So there's this meme that's really popular from the years that Norm Macdonald was on Weekend Updates that's like, Now, this may strike some viewers as harsh, but I think everyone involved in this story should die. I don't endorse that. That's a quote, but it's, I think, relevant, because everybody in this story just seems awful to me. I have no interest in defending Kiwi Farms. I have no interest in defending Cloudflare, keeping them up for so long. I have no interest in defending, I don't know, anybody. It sounds like Kiwi Farms is populated by a bunch of not great people who are doing really horrible, awful things. As I understand it, the prompt or the question is really about, like, is this something we should be concerned about, kind of outside of this? I think maybe we're all going to come to an agreement that, like, these people seem like terrible people and probably, shouldn't be given a lot of airtime. This is sort of like the arguments that we had around when Amazon Web Services banned Parler, right? It's just a question of, like, who is able to access, the mechanisms and the technology that it actually gives you a platform and an access to the internet, and should we be concerned when providers start cracking down on who has access to it? I'm not sure at what point we should be concerned, but I don't think this is a point we should be concerned about, because, like Wick articulated, this is a pretty clear threshold that was crossed. Like, imminent threat to human life, that seems like a pretty good line to draw for anybody who hosts websites, that's the point where you should probably take that website down. Now, when we get to the point in the inevitable future when Amazon Web Services owns everything else and they start being far more heavy-handed with what they allow and what they don't, going beyond threat to human life and more ideological disagreements, if that happened, I might be more concerned. But in this case, the analogy to the Norm Macdonald quote is, I believe the entire Kiwi Farms thing should just poof into the void of the internet and never return. But that's just me.
Okay. Scott?
All right, so this is where I'm going to piss off everybody on the internet. First and
Probably not me,
foremost,
though.
there's nothing inherently immoral about doxing. Doxing is simply taking information that you have gained and making it public. The fact of the matter is that there's no rights violation by doing that. There's a rights violation by hacking information. There's a rights violation, obviously, from the consequentialist analysis of, like, secondary causes that people want to do, where individuals might commit violence, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in this example, both Kiwi Farms and, Keffals are using the idea of doxing as a means to try and enact violence on other people, right? Kiwi Farms docs, if you actually read it, like, it showed some pornography that may or may not be Keffals. It showed a ton of evidence. One of the big posts that everyone kind of, like, initially was talking about, it basically proved that, Keffals was, running the Catboy server and all of the issues with that, which, pedophilia would be the big issues there, and it showed all of the times that, like, she admittedly and openly funneled HRT and androgen therapy to people with, like, charity organizations to harm children. So, like, Keffals is a known and admitted abuser, right? This obviously isn't a good person. She's a piece of shit. People at Kiwi Farms seem to do a lot of salacious and fucked up things. A lot of them seem to be immoral in a lot of the things that they do. I would say that they seem to be like pieces of shit. There's no good guys in this story. The thing about the Cloudflare situation is really interesting. First and foremost, the harm, the violence thing that they're referencing, they didn't directly reference what any of that is. Potentially or supposedly it's a bomb threat that was, like, direct and actionable with, like, specific locations. This person was banned within an hour from Kiwi Farms. They didn't leave it up, and everyone was making fun of them for glow posting because, like, it was more likely somebody from Keffals' community that did that than it was someone on Kiwi Farms, based off the fact that everyone was memeing at them and laughing at them and saying, "Getting the fuck out of here," and then they got out of there. So what should Cloudflare do? Now, because now we're at a moral question, not what is morally justified. Cloudflare is a private business, and if they don't want to associate with Kiwi Farms, that's their right. And I get it. You know what I mean? Kiwi Farms is a shit place. Like, it's not like a great fucking place. They did it with Daily Stormer and they did it with 4chan, right? These are both, Daily Stormer, famous neo-Nazi website. 4chan, famous website where people can post anonymously and troll, and the media thinks is responsible for every bad thing that ever happened. And usually doesn't have any evidence of it. But regardless, the problem with Cloudflare doing this is that Cloudflare has reputation management, just like any other business, right? But Cloudflare's reputation is less so based on, like, association and more so about what it is that they provide, which is protection and security. And much like the old days of the SPLC and the old days of of the ACLU, right? When they were defending neo-Nazis because they were so pro freedom of speech. It's kind of the same situation with Cloudflare. If you give up on certain people, it has a kind of chilling effect on your own, not chilling effect in the constitutional sense here in America, but it has an effect on whether or not people are going to use your service because of the next bit of controversy or because the next human piece of garbage, Keffals, decides that you're the target of their ire, like, you know, Destiny or whatever. Like, let's see how controversial the next time is. So I don't think it was a smart move by Cloudflare. I think their justification is probably based off of bullshit glow posting, but ultimately they have the right to do that. And if you want to dox people, dox people. There's nothing immoral about it. There's plenty of times where doxing is a good thing that people should do. Like, you know, you had some personal information about Hunter Biden. I don't know, that might be good to put that information out to the public.
All right, let's go to our friend DB.
I actually agree with everything Scott just said, and I don't think I could say it any better. So yeah, what Scott said, basically.
Okay, I'll ask about that later. Let's go to our mysterious friend below.
I largely agree with what Scott said, but I want to clarify a few things and kind of provide some additional information and another angle to look at it. So first of all, we should clarify what Kiwi Farms is. Kiwi Farms is a message board where a bunch of no-life having basement dwellers who will never know the touch of a human being stalk people and obsess over them and post information on them and oftentimes accumulate a lot of information. The platform itself is intended to be mostly unfettered speech platform with some very, very restrictive, strict exceptions. And so it allows people to go as far as like doxing people and accumulating, sensitive information on people and creating profiles on people that a lot of other people can pour over and add additional information to. Now, who was actually going after Keffals? That's a big question mark. Kiwi Farms is like an aggregation point for data, and Keffals is one of the people who has become a spotlight for Kiwi farmers. Lots of people who would want to go after Keffals could get that information from Kiwi Farms as a one-stop shop. But a lot of that information is actually available elsewhere. Whether or not Kiwi farmers themselves were the ones like swatting her and such, that question is still up in the air. We don't actually know. So
Or if she was
oftentimes,
Sorry,
yeah,
my bad. I
and
thought it was
oftentimes
muted.
that stuff is done by like groypers on Cozy TV and shit, right? So like they're the ones who do a lot of that harassing stuff and use information off of Kiwi Farms to harass people. So keep that in mind, that there is a separation between the aggregation of information and the obsessing over people, and then what actual attacks are happening. And we don't really know if those are related. All we really know is that all the information is mostly located in this one site called Kiwi Farms. As for Kiwi Farms being taken down, it has moved over to another DDoS protection service who has suspended services as of earlier today. So they've been down since then. Josh Moon, who owns the site, had a family emergency and had to move on from trying to keep the site up and said it's going to be down indefinitely until he can straighten things out. But it's kind of up in the air right now whether or not Kiwi Farms is coming back. It seems like it's probably coming back. We just don't know when. So it's down right now for the time being. I think that overall, one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that when it comes to an individual and their safety and their self-preservation, oftentimes you can get to a point where you have like effectively tunnel vision, or not even a tunnel vision, but you're seeing enemies everywhere and you're jumping at shadows. Keffals is definitely doing that. Keffals seems to have done some things that I find to be very problematic. Keffals has basically turned into a Kiwi farmer at this point with the way that she's gone after some people like Joshua Moon, who owns the site, and has doxed him and his mother and made threats about his mother. So in the way I would put it, if you let the Kiwi farmers turn you into a Kiwi farmer, then they win. So that's the way I view it. But at the same time, I'm trying to be a human about this and say, hey, if I were in Keffals' position, I'd be furious. I'd be considering self-preservation. If people were actually chasing me around the world, I'd probably be doing some unethical shit too. Difference between myself and Keffals, though, is I would operate a little bit differently with a lot more, being much more discriminate in who I'm choosing as targets, and would be much more on the DL with what actions I take. But I would probably be even more unethical than she is. So that's my opening statement.
So I think it's important to note here, and you notice you didn't call out any one of like Fabian or Zonia for being long-winded. Wow, thanks, Prime. Anyway,
They follow your lead, Wick.
fair
right?
enough.
You
Fair
set the
enough. I am
tone.
a leader. It's true.
You set
But
the tone.
this
Yeah,
idea,
sure.
right? So there's two things I want to address. First, to Corey Campbell's point, where people have harmed themselves, allegedly harmed themselves, taken their lives because of harassment due to Kiwi Farm site. If that's the line we're going to draw, we need to take Twitter down too, because much more people have ended their lives based on harassment on all sorts of social media platforms. We know this is true. Since the advent of social media, self-harm, especially among young women, has ballooned, gang. It has ballooned. And so that cannot be our only line. There has to be other considerations here.
Or it could be,
Oh,
and we
yeah.
should get rid of all of it.
I mean,
Well,
every time I go onto Twitter, I cut myself. It's the only way that I'm able to handle it. I've got scars all over my body because of how many tweets I've put out there. You see
So-
like 12,000 tweets out there? I got 12,000 cuts on my body.
Hell yeah.
So
Internally.
to use, I guess, Eucharist's point, I think there's a stated difference in like the stated goals of Twitter and the stated goals of Kiwi Farms. I think that's fair.
Yeah,
No,
I
that's
don't
fair.
care.
I'm not sad. I'm not sad that Kiwi Farms is down by any
Yeah.
means necessary. But those celebrating it as a victory, like, gang, yo,
Yeah, it's
gonna,
temporary.
like, even if this particular site goes down, you think this behavior is going to be any way stopped? These people are still going to be out there. They're still going to be congregate and aggregate. Hell, they'll even find a Discord group chat or something, right? They'll be able to take this information. Like,
Well, right
when
now
it comes
there's a
to-
huge effort to take all the archives of Kiwi Farms and move them over to another site. So
Yeah, and it's going to be like, even if it gets fragmented a little and becomes a little more difficult, it's you're boxing ghosts, gang. It's just you're not going to hit this. We have to figure out a way, right, as a society, to deal with what happens on a legislative level when you get doxxed to a certain extent or swatted to a certain extent. What those
Well,
lines are, I don't
there's-
know,
I
because
think
well,
some
there's a
states
problem with that
have outlined-
though.
there are
outlined it.
problems,
Well,
and let me address it before you go. I'll address your concern here, because when we say doxing, we mean a whole load of shit that
Yeah.
falls under a huge umbrella, and some, as Fabian Liberty says, ain't bad. Like, we used to dox ourselves all the time back in the 80s. There's a phone book. You would have your phone number and your address. Anyone could look it up. It was
What's the
there.
book?
Yeah, and then you had a book on it. But when it comes to the doxing of also adding the threat there, like posting someone's photo and saying, it would be a shame if anything happened to you when you're residing at this location in this place at this time. I think there's a substantive difference there. How do we carve this out legislatively? I'm not sure, but I think we need to.
I don't think there is a way to carve it out legislatively because it's too messy and too ambiguous. People are doxing themselves as well as doxing other people all the time by providing bits and pieces of information that are enough to pinpoint a person's location IRL, or at least make it easier to. And
Yeah, it's
that's
just metadata.
Yeah, you would effectively be putting like so many people at risk of legal repercussions for just the stuff that people are doing every single day without even realizing it. So I don't think there is a way to legislate that. You basically just have to teach people to be way more aware of how their information can be used and what of it can be used. Like, I know so a lot of people ask me for bigger pictures of my garden to show kind of like what it is I've got, what my garden looks like, and I refuse to do it. And the reason why is because it's too easy for people to try to figure out where it is that I live. They already know I live in Silicon Valley. That's enough information right there. Any additional information can pinpoint where it is that I am. I pay attention for things like reflections and eyes. When I was taking pictures of my cats, because the cell phones cameras are so good these days, I would realize, oh shit, you could see the reflection in their eyes. And they could see, because at one point when I had my cat out in the garden in the front yard, you could see the reflection in her eyes of the street sign that was across the street. And it was that good. And this is something that you can see. You take a picture of yourself, like in front of, you're going and getting your coffee or something.
Is this a new Apple commercial?
All they got to see is license plates that are around you on one store in the background, and they know where you are, right?
Yeah, like to Zoni's point, like I actually got doxxed like this last year. Sort of like this. I have a koi pond, right? Very fancy koi pond. It's like 40 feet long, about 6 feet deep. It's very nice. And I would show people pictures of it, right? Whenever they'd ask, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is my fish, yada yada. To brag, because I like to brag about things. And last year, somebody and I've also been like semi-open about like the county or city that I'm in once in a while, like sometimes. So somebody went on Google Maps to like a top-down view of the city, went house by house until they found my koi pond. Right? And there are like thousands of houses in the city, but they fucking did it. Right? And they found my koi pond, they found my full name, they found everything, right? Now luckily this wasn't a person trying to hurt me. This is like somebody kind of like obsessed with me romantically, I guess. So I was able to talk to them and get that cleared up, right? Get them to drop that. But it does fucking happen, right? People will go to crazy fucking lengths to find you if they want to. So you have to be very careful with your information.
And this is where it comes down to, like, so many people have been doxxed and swatted on all sides of these things, right? Like, it's a tool that we have normalized. I remember being on a Prime panel, right? One of your late night panels, where people were arguing that actually libs of TikTok getting doxxed was a good thing, and we need to dox them, and we need to expose their information so that everyone can see.
Or Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, and Marjorie Taylor Greene recently got swatted. Things like that. Like
Andrew Wilson, aka Big Papa Fascist, and his family got swatted just a couple days ago.
Yeah,
that's always going to happen if you go after America first.
Yeah,
just expect to get swatted.
Yeah, they're the ones who did it.
Yeah, just really quick, though, that I wish that people had the same energy that they're bringing against Kiwi farms to the people who dox libs of, like Taylor Lorenz, the journalist who dox libs of TikTok, and these other people who swat Kai Clips or swat the quartering or swat these rightoids. I wish they'd bring that same energy, right, that they brought towards Kiwi farms, and I wish they'd be a little more consistent. That's all. I think that you can make the argument, right? This is something that I struggle with, trying to find the exact like ethical kind of line of aggression here. But I think you can make the argument that when you dox someone, right, that alone is not a violation of their rights, right? Now, unless, of course, you got that information via hacking or something like that. If you got that information in an illegal way, obviously you violated some property right or contract or something. But let's say you compile all of the publicly available information.
I gotta interrupt you.
No, you don't have to. You could actually let me finish. You could do that. Now, what I would say here is that the problem is when do you get to direct and actionable violence, right? And so when you are saying here's a person's information, I don't know that alone is necessarily enough to institute like a violation of rights. But when you're, let's say, Keffals or your Kiwi farms, and those things come with like what Wick was saying, I think it does get to a direct and actionable violence. When you say, here's your personal information, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it'd be a shame if something terrible happened to them, right? Or when Keffals is saying, here's the business in Kiev that is hosting Kiwi farms. Hey, wink, you know what to do, guys, which is what she said, you know what to do. And then she also claimed that they were hosting Russian propaganda as a means of helping Ukraine lose the war, right? So she's putting out information saying, here's where they are in the Ukraine. You know what to do. Here's the exact location. And then also saying, these guys are your enemies that you're at war with. When you put all of those things together, I don't really see a substantive difference between that and go punch that specific person in the face right now. right? Like that seems like a direct call to action to violence against an individual. So I think there's a certain level where you reach direct and actionable violence.
So I want to say something real quick here, just for chat. I don't know, Red Rover, if you're just kidding or whatever, but if you're not kidding, anybody in chat who's like saying, "Yay, it's cool that people got swatted," what you're saying is, I hope those people get shot and killed. That's literally what you're saying. That's the whole point of swatting in the first place, is hoping that the cops are not cautious and that they end up pulling the trigger and killing somebody, right? So, and that's always a chance. It's always a risk, especially here in the US where we're a lot more trigger happy. So I don't know. It looked like you said it was cool. I don't know. I can't tell because you didn't put like a kappa or anything. But it's just something that people need to keep in mind. And, you know, just keep that in mind. If you think it's cool that people are getting swatted, then you're a pretty disgusting person.
I also want to say swatting is an action that is separate from doxing. I know that the swatting often follows the doxing because the doxing leads a large number of public people to now have the information, which gives them a capacity to swat. But I think we do need to also like make sure that we draw a line between these two things.
Now there's not like that's not the only danger from doxing, right? There's what's called dox talk, right? TikToks that make a habit of doxing people and then taking and directing their viewers to contact this person's place of employment, right? To get them fired.
Yeah, it's what Keffals is doing with the
and that is
mom.
It's not as bad as swatting, but it's not good, gang. It's an intimidation tactic. It's a way of trying to create to get someone's income taken away, to destroy their lives. And a lot of being that we live in a capitalist system, and there you can cross that off your bingo cards, gang. But given that we live in the system we do, it's a way of trying to destroy their lives because for whatever reason you're trying to do it. The reasons vary as much as the people doing it. But again, like TikTok has a dedicated section of its TikTok users, Dox Talk. They got a name for it. No one's campaigning against them. No one's raising money to combat against them. No one's trying to call them out, right? And trying to get them taken down because they're endangering people's lives, which they absolutely are. The hypocrisy bothers me. I don't know if you can tell. We have 100,000 reasons to believe Keffals is going to be okay, right? 100,000 reasons to believe she's going to be okay.
True.
But at the end of the day,
she might not have been. I mean,
it
it could have turned out different.
The big threat.
I mean, to be
right?
fair, we don't know that
issue.
she was swatted either, right?
I mean, like,
she presented decent enough information and what
pretty sure it's the
she's using the term incorrectly because the police chief said that they actually executed
knocked on her door, right?
They executed a warrant. So swatting is not executing a warrant. Swatting is, okay, we've got a threat right now that we have to address. You're not going and getting a warrant.
Right.
So it's an emergency situation.
Right. That's kind of what I mean. Like,
it seemed like her initial story was full of lies too, about being woken up with a gun in her face.
I mean, it's Keffals. Of course she lied.
Look,
like,
at the end of the day, whatever happened to her, even if it was just the cops calling on her and they just knocked on the door, that was still bad. The doxing of her is still bad. It should not have happened. I disavow it. Anyone who's trying to swat or dox Keffals or even contact her employer to get her fired.
Yeah, sure. But I want to hear what. Sorry, I want to hear what. We got that part. I want to hear what our mysterious friend was trying to say, like, in terms of like the validity of the arguments. I hadn't heard all these, like the validity of the story. Excuse me.
Yeah, so it turned out later on that after the police chief came out with a statement that what actually happened was they had served a warrant. There had been threats to multiple politicians that were done under the guise of being Keffals, and they got a warrant and executed the warrant. And so they said that they had to do enhanced security measures, I think they said, which I'm guessing implied that, like they had an AR-15 or something. They didn't say what weapons that they had on hand, but Keffals said there was a rifle and they didn't contradict that. So I'm guessing when they said enhanced security measures, it meant that they had SWAT gear with them, but they were executing a warrant. They weren't busting in or anything.
There's two other parts of the story that are missing here, right? Keffals also claimed that they dead named her the entire time.
We don't need to go
and-
into that. That's aside.
Right. Well, I was just like, the credibility of the story, right? Like in
Yeah,
Keffals.
well, let's-
I mean, we can
Not-
just
not
assume Kev. Okay, well then I'll stick to the next one, right? Which is that they confiscated electronics, and so the assumption is the narrative that this was done as an attack against her, which is I would say probabilistically more likely, but that doesn't mean that she didn't do these things, right? That doesn't mean that she's not still being investigated. So I'm just saying, like, it could still be legitimate, though I would say unlikely.
Well, so
So,
do you suspect that she wasn't dead named? Sorry, I want to know that. Like,
yeah. Well, if you
Yeah,
want to get
she
into
said
that one,
she said
yeah.
that she was dead named the entire time,
Yeah.
right? And
The cop
then
said no.
the police said,
Well-
"Look, we have CCTV footage. We have CCTV footage,
Yeah.
and tons of witness statements saying that you were not dead named the entirety of the time. One document had your dead name on it, which is what you showed as proof that you were dead named the entire time. And the reason for that was that Keffals had previous arrest records or charges or whatever
She
from
was in the
another
system
time
for
with her
whatever reason. Yeah.
older name, and like that was just like the default name that got used in the system from the last time she was in trouble with the law for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Nor care.
So anyway.
So those were like
that's-
some of the lies she told.
But
Unless the cops are lying, you know what I mean? Fucking cops lie too.
yeah. So the
You know what I
but
mean? Like-
anyways, the claim of swatting ended up she had to walk it back. But unfortunately, there's people still run with the term swatting. It's still bad though. Somebody effectively tried to get her swatted, right? But through a different means. Like normally when they do a swatting, they call and they say, "Oh my God, there's somebody holding up
With
my
a gun,
son
yeah.
at gunpoint in the house, and I'm scared. I'm trapped in the room or something, right? And then the people show up, cops show up and break the door down, right? That's what swatting typically is. In this case, they tried to do something a little bit more elaborate, I guess.
So what did they say? What did they report her for? Like what was on the warrant?
I don't remember what was on the warrant, but I know that what they stated was that there were threats against the lives of multiple politicians under the name, and the assumed identity threatening them was Keffals, which is basically just
Oh,
a
I see.
spoofed email.
Yeah.
And they sent a photo of a handgun as well, along with the threat.
Now, the reason this is important is because then she made $100,000, Canadian
Yeah.
dollars, mind you. But with this
Yeah, it's
narrative,
monopoly money, but it's still money.
Yeah, she also claimed that she was going to bring a lawsuit against the London Police Department. When I say London Police Department,
I don't know. Well, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on the whole, but I don't know that she ever explicitly said she's going to bring a lawsuit against.
Yes, she did.
Oh, she did.
London.
She said
did.
she explicitly
She said
said
she
that
was
the
suing the
leftover
London
money from moving would go towards the
Well,
lawsuit.
so I did read the GoFundMe.
And if she's living in Europe now, that might be an excuse to not bring a lawsuit or something. We'll see. I don't know. I don't care. You're stupid enough to give Keffals money after she already had like 30 grand. Like that's on you for being a stupid simp. I don't know what to tell you.
No, like at least going by, because I was on the Wix panel, sort of touching upon that. Like I read Keffals' GoFundMe page. I don't think it ever explicitly, like unless she said it somewhere else, but at least on the GoFundMe page, I don't think she ever explicitly
she said it on
like.
Twitter.
Okay, well I'm blocked by her on Twitter because I associate with the wrong people.
Yeah.
Ah.
Don't follow tweets from Star.
That's
You get
me
an
too.
insta ban. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a moot of Nicholas Dioria, so I'm blocked.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, so now, I mean, depending on how we want to explore this, because I've talked before about like how, like I thought it was really stupid, the public campaign, because it's not really going to solve the problem. They're just going to move around. They're going to get Josh Moon when if he does end up getting, coming back to restore Kiwi Farms, is just going to get more clever. He's going to make it more decentralized. He's going to make it more resilient to these things, hosted on multiple services across the world, and just make it so there's too much of a moving target and it's too distributed to take down. And like I was saying, a social campaign, it feels good, but it doesn't really solve the problem. And it also kind of opens up some problem areas. Like, I don't know how honest the Cloudflare statement is, but it certainly seemed to me like there was a lot of pressure on them because they even stated in that statement that the
Yeah.
pressure was mounting up. So are they, and this has already happened 2 times before with 2 other sites that they ended up, canceling.
Daily Stormer and 4chan.
It wasn't 4chan, it was 8chan.
Oh, sorry, 8chan. I
82.
apologize.
And so there's a little bit of a problem there because they're effectively saying, hey, there's a social lever that you're allowed to tweak when you're pissed off. And over time, what happens inevitably with those social levers is the bar will kind of get lowered. Destiny made a statement about this. He was talking about how he was tempted to possibly donate to Kiwi Farms to help give them more capital to find better hosting and make themselves more resilient, because he felt that once Kiwi Farms goes down, he's next on the chopping block. That Keffals will then use that same leverage, that same social power to go after him, who is also, he's using Cloudflare's traffic filtering
This is
services.
important because this Keffals has the mainstream media, like in a very real way, journalists, Vice, The Guardian, all sorts of these different institutions, right, have rallied behind her. She was immediately granted access when it comes to being reported on. She has the strongest support system I've ever fucking seen for anyone. And she's gone from things like 400 to 600 viewers to 4,000 viewers. This has made her rich and famous in a very, very real way.
Yeah, I mean, like,
And
she was
the
also
worry-
like journalists were fighting to get her blue check
Yeah.
mark. Like,
and the worry,
but it's off the
She's
back
got
of
it now.
other people attack. Like her clout is, her influence is not coming from nowhere. Like it's coming like.
no, it's
I
not
mean,
nowhere. That's
you,
true.
You point to the GoFundMe, or like people point to the GoFundMe. Like, what does it say about the support of like all that money coming forth as a result of her, at least, people impersonating her and potentially making false claims that she's going to take the lives of politicians. Like,
Yo, look,
I
at the
think
end of
that's
the
a
day,
testament to the amount of support that she gets.
yes, but the way you use your platform is important. It matters.
I don't disagree.
And
Yeah.
I think that the way she's used her platform to attack literally anyone who remotely disagrees with her, and she is no stranger to using doxing and all these other kind of tactics which she has railed against Kiwi Farms for doing. She has wanted and expressed the will to. Oh, go
I
on.
want to hear from Eucharist if Eucharist has any thoughts at all on any of these things before I continue, because I'm trying to organize how I feel about this and like where we go with this conversation, because we weren't. The point of this conversation wasn't necessarily to talk about the details of what happened at Keffals, but more, the infrastructure. But like, Eucharist, what are your thoughts, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine to talk about the more infrastructure part, because I'm just like, I just have such little interest in like the drama of the day kind of stuff. I'm so far removed from this. I touch grass every now and then, and so like I just like Keffals, like you guys are highlighting things that she's done that seem like not great, and but obviously it seems like there's some dirtbags on this forum. But yeah, I think the broader like infrastructure question of like what does the future look like when a popular content creator might be able to marshal kind of a backlash against a site with people who disagree with them. I know that's not like, I'm stripping that down to something that's not what happened here, right? Far more happened than that. I think that's maybe the concern that the broader conversation could be about. It's like, okay, this case, we could quibble about details. A bunch of people seem bad in the situation, but maybe justified. But let's extend that out a little bit into more consolidated power, larger viewer base, and the kind of backlash that a site could get. And I think it's a really interesting question how we handle that going forward. But I don't really have a great answer because I've just been kind of spaced out listening to the back and forth about lawsuits in Ireland and how many times doxed, and I don't know. It's too much for me. I think like the real question for me is like, what level of like antisocial behavior online, a space that encourages antisocial behavior, is enough to the point where any self-respecting web hosting service would take off a website that's facilitating antisocial behavior. I think Wick had a good point. That's like, if we're drawing the line pretty far down here, that's going to also catch things like Twitter. Maybe that's a good thing. But if we're drawing the line way up here, that's going to change how what we call for in the future in terms of what sites should exist and what we think should be done to them when they do things that piss us off. So.
Sure. Okay. So, Yeah, and I think the infrastructure question is better because I don't know. I'm closer to you, Chris, here. I mean, I am terminally online. I don't touch grass, but like I don't I don't engage in the drama. So like that's why I'm learning these things from you guys. Actually, I don't have any opinion on it because I'm just learning these things. I don't know, right? But in terms of the infrastructure, and what should be the that dividing line. Well, can we all agree that there should be a dividing line? Period.
Sure. Yes.
Right? Is
I
that
think
a thing?
the line
What do you
that
mean?
they mentioned in the second one, assuming they're honest, imminent and immediate threat to human life. Boom.
Scott, I mean, like, should there be a point where these infrastructure providers decide to disassociate themselves? That or would it be better for society? Let's try this. Would it be better for society if they kept hosting everyone or made decisions otherwise?
See, the problem here, right, is that the market is, well, first of all, the market's not free, but the market is in many ways responding to the demands of the people that utilize their services, right? So when a large segment of the culture, has this kind of anti-free speech mentality and attacks a company and wants to cancel this company and wants to harass this company so that they'll stop doing it. I do think that what we see is it becomes all, I don't want to say it's like a domino effect, Reagan style with communism in the world, but I mean, it kind of is, right? It like if we kind of give up on those principles and we say like, oh, well, in this instance, these guys are really bad. So like, I totally support their decision to do so, right? Then what we see is more and more of this kind of self-censorship from companies that don't want the same thing to happen to them. You know what I mean? Like Discord, for example, like a year ago, my Discord server had 300 COVID studies in it, most of which were peer-reviewed studies because we were constantly talking about COVID. We're talking about ADE. We were talking about the differences between, like we were deep, like knee deep in the science, right? And then a whole bunch of Discord servers just got nuked retroactively based off of past things that were said because Discord was afraid of mounting pressure about COVID. And so what did I do? I removed that section of my server. I self-censored in order to keep my Discord server and said, hey, I'd love to talk about COVID. Fucking DM me. I have all those studies. I maintain those studies. And now I have to curate that. And I can't do that collectively as a community. And so while what Kiwi Farms is doing is really like, I don't think anybody's like really morally supporting what Kiwi Farms is doing. Even me, when I say that I think doxing is amoral, I think they're obviously doing it with shit intentions in some regards, though I think some of what was done against Keffals was probably a positive good, to prove that she's a known child abuser and is an admitted known child abuser. But, a lot, tying that with like personal information stuff, it's obvious that they want violence to occur. And I don't think we want that. But we also have to be really careful about, as a culture, just letting companies get away with mounting social pressure and then just being pussies, because it can create an effect where we don't have free speech platforms, or we constantly have a paralleled system where hardcore left-wingers are on this secret site and hardcore right-wingers are on this site and normies are on like regular government pressure sites, and we're not even communicating anymore.
So you're saying we need to bully the companies into having a spine so they can't be bullied by the cancel culture mobs?
I appreciate that Kathy Newman take, but that's not what I'm saying.
We need to speak out.
Yeah, I just I understand what you're saying about like, well, if one social pressure campaign works, then what about these other ones? And you might disagree with these other social pressure campaigns. That the right, for instance, can be very adept. I mean, we've seen the right do this before. It's like this like isn't.
I mean, it's usually
new.
the left, but the right is getting good at it now.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if it's usually the left. We got the history of like the right doing this in the past. For instance, where I was going.
Yeah,
with
cancel
this
culture,
like,
real common in the right, not the left.
Well,
actually,
Mr. Girl just got
actually,
canceled by the right. He literally got mass reported by the Cozy TV mob and they
I-
took him down. They banned his main YouTube channel and then
Is he back
suspended
yet?
him from his other. Not yet, no.
Yeah,
I'm
but we all
Nevertheless,
know he will
talking
be.
about like
Hopefully.
I'm talking about pre-social media days, right? Where we would have it's called like the parent something council. Where they
Okay,
would,
yeah,
like,
fair enough.
Yeah, parental
they would-
advisory,
Yeah.
with music, movies, it's video
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
and
yeah.
toys.
1990s.
Paper
Yeah, yeah.
stickers.
A
100%,
satanic
yeah.
panic.
Yeah. So this is a thing that happens. So like both sides are capable of mounting this kind of
Yes,
pressure.
yeah, I agree with you. I'm sorry, I thought we were talking in like current context, because like the current context of the right is better and more proactive at cancel culture is insane. If you want to talk about 20 years ago, absolutely.
I wouldn't say they're better. I'd say they still engage in it. I would say that the since companies have moved in a progressive direction, people on the left have learned to take advantage of that, and so they have a bigger stick. To swing.
Yeah, the culture war is just in a different place.
Okay. Yeah. So since so understanding that that these pressure campaigns they can work against you, and like I guess I feel like these that I want companies to take action at some point in time. There are some things that probably shouldn't be there. I'm imagining like a site where like a person who has been who we know has been convicted of sexual assault, right? Serial sexual assault. And it's saying, okay, well, this is how I did things, right? Like if you are or want to go down this path, do these things, right? Step-by-step guide. This is how I make it happen. You can make it happen too. Like that seems like a site that, I mean, should we want that on? Like as a society, do we want that around? The individuals here are going to say that, well, I don't like that content, but something be done about that content at some point. Is there no limit? We can say everyone will say direct cause of violence, right? Great. But beyond that, or even like to phrase it like that information in like a memoir context, like I don't. But then I don't know.
Even just
I'm
having some
completely torn.
page where her address and shit is stored, like that's like even if they're not directly calling for violence, even that
I'm-
might be over the line, right?
And does that include
Wait.
like encouraging someone to take their own life?
Like, so
But
even,
then, like-
let me address. I want to address the where the address is stored. Like, we all voluntarily give all sorts of institutions our address, right? And
Sure.
and it's stored online. It's got to be stored somewhere. So I don't think that's the line, right? I think that obviously can't be. It has to be more than that.
How many of you are using
Okay.
a VPN, right? Like, because if you're not using a
yeah, I
VPN,
am.
you're giving your IP address to like every fucking website you go to. And like
Yeah.
unless you're in an apartment building, right? Then you basically gave them your exact address.
Yeah, so Wick, I think that the issue that I have is this is why I agree with Zonia, right? This doesn't seem like something that can be addressed with law. It seems like something that needs to be done individually by like website providers or hosts or whatever, because it is so difficult to capture every bit of nuance that you need to make a rule about this.
So the
Like
problem
at some
with
point,
that,
you need a
I-
human being
I
to look
understand.
at this and
I
make a
understand.
judgment.
Well, the problem with that is then it just if we say we can't do it that way, then I don't think we can meaningfully mitigate this. Like even if Twitter, even if Cloudflare, even if Amazon all decided we're not going to host this site or this kind of any site that engages in this kind of thing, they're just going to move on to things like Telegram. They're just going to move. There will be something that they will use, even if they have to build it up. Because remember, a lot of these people have deep pockets. They will build it themselves, and
Well,
it
let
might
them
be
build it
harder.
themselves.
It might
Sure.
be
Yeah.
harder, but then we
But
can't.
okay, Wick, that's like who cares if they build it themselves? Like if there's a thing that happens, then okay, then that's a separate.
Doesn't mean we have to make it
issue.
easy or like have no
Like
barriers.
yeah, we don't have to make it easier for them. Like
But
who
we're not
the
talking
fuck
about-
cares if they build it up themselves? Like
No
sure,
one's
go
saying
ahead,
no
right? Like
barriers.
just like Truth Socials taking off to the moon. I'm sure, right? Like who cares? Let them give it a try. But like
Actually,
whether
can I say-
the established. Sorry, was that you, Doobie?
Yeah, I was gonna
No.
say like really quick. So I had that impression too, right? But have you guys heard of Rumble? It's like
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
streaming service. So
It's
I
not
thought, I had the
Rumble.
impression.
You should follow me on Rumble.
I had the impression it's like a tiny thing, right? But we had what's his name?
I think it's Canadian too.
Oh God, I just had him on like literally this weekend. Something Hinkle.
Jackson Hinkle.
Jackson Hinkle. I had him on my server on Saturday or Sunday for an AMA, right? And he was streaming on Rumble. And he had like 1,000 people watching him on Rumble. There are other streams with like 3,000 or 4,000 people watching. So there is a community there, right? So like I don't think it's just saying that like I'll go to True Social as if like there aren't communities there that are growing is enough.
And because
I think we should acknowledge that, hey, yeah, if we push them off enough, eventually these communities will grow.
And the problem comes, we can't this is the reason this is bad, right? Because we know that it's harder to track these movements. The public, by and large, it just something isn't on their radar, so they can't combat it. They radicalize each other, right? Because there's no pushback to their echo chamber, and it just creates this tailspin that leads directly to real life violence. And you say, yeah, sure, but this is something we have studies on. We know it's true.
Yeah. Oh my God, Rick. I know.
But we also have studies showing there's some aspect of deplatforming that works.
Yeah, deplatforming works. And
what does that even mean? Works.
Oh, 1 second. Hold on. Shit. Fuck. I'm trying to get somewhere. Like, I've been trying to do it for a while. Holy shit. So, I'm going over what I said previously about like the sexual assaulter, the rapist, who puts online how I did these things, right? But then I thought about a site that my audience, if you've been here for a while, know that I was often Literotica. I like sex stories. It's a lot of fun. And
I disapprove.
Just
saying it for the record.
But you can find all kinds of stories there, and other sites which are even less restrictive as to what you can put on there. You can find all kinds of unsavory stories, and I'm thinking about all the things that I've read, and some of them are pretty fucked up, right? And I'm imagining that same person who, actually did sexual assault people, and then writing a story about that. That would, and some of these sites, that would fit right at home. And how would I tell the difference, honestly, right? Like, it's actual step-by-step guide to how they do it, but they just include the details of, like getting naked.
Coaching and satire, yeah.
Yeah, right?
Or CNC in this example.
Would I want those sites to be taken down? Because for some of those stories, especially not even Literotica, some other sites, they get really fucking extreme. Super goddamn extreme. But I want them to have the space to do that. So I guess I'm leaning away from the censorship, but there's a line here, and sure, direct violence, great, but I think there's got to be something under that. Other things that we would also not want on the internet that would be a good thing for people to take down.
Well, but I think there's a distinction here, right? There's a distinction between Cloudflare choosing of its own volition.
Cloudflare, by
right?
the way.
Okay, Cloudflare, sorry. Choosing of its own volition to not associate with a business because it doesn't align with their values or what they want. And us kind of celebrating a social campaign to stop a business from doing business that actually does kind of align with their values, and not necessarily the values of like what's occurring, but the value of kind of providing security for for things that are both hateful and for things that are controversial and for things that are good. Right. And so I think it's important that we focus on that distinction, because like if Cloudflare just said, fuck this business, they don't pay us enough, or we don't like what they're doing, we choose not to do business with them, that's one thing. But when we're like arfing like seals because we're able to stop a business from doing what it wants to do, out of fear, and supposedly like this bomb threat thing, which, like I said, is far more likely a Glow post or someone from Keffals community than actually someone from Kiwi Farms, because they got laughed at. Yeah, I mean, it seems like an op because like they laughed at them. The other thing that I want to challenge is this idea that like deplatforming works. because you can look at it in terms of the spread of ideas that you don't like, right? And you can say when you deplatform someone, the spread of those ideas goes down a significant portion because they have much less audience. But I think what Wick is really focusing on is the isolation of those ideas, right? Because like if it was more acceptable to talk about, let's say, the great replacement theory in open spaces, maybe we wouldn't have had a Buffalo shooter. Maybe he wouldn't have been groomed by the Sandman and a retired FBI agent in a small private Discord, so that he could, get all of those things. Maybe if that was just allowable in YouTube comments section, people would have been like, hey, numbnuts, here's a link to a study that shows why like this isn't a big deal. Like,
It
so
could happen
you
on
could,
YouTube.
well, I mean,
It
like
would have to be more
wherever,
direct than that,
right?
but-
Or maybe it's
Yeah,
Twitter or wherever it is, right? But when you start banning certain ideas in conversations and you push them to the edge, you might reduce their overall impact, right? And I would say it's a violation of rights unless the business themselves tries to do it. But setting that aside, right? You might reduce their overall impact, but you also isolate those ideas within communities that radicalize themselves to a further degree.
And keep in
Well-
mind, all these studies show that it works, quote unquote, show is that it doesn't spread as much on the specific platforms that it got banned from,
Yeah.
which no shit, Sherlock, right?
Yeah.
Obviously,
And it-
but we cannot track the spread of these ideas on the platforms that haven't banned them. And by golly, gang, it's spreading. If deplatformed work, we wouldn't have
Hold on.
more like of these right-wing ideas just in the
No, no.
mainstream space now.
That's
Wait,
not.
like, so
No.
But-
We
but-
might have more.
but-
I don't know.
Well, okay. When I'm talking about deplatforming, I'm talking about deplatforming individuals, not ideas. Like ideas, you
Okay,
can't
fair.
kill an idea.
That's fair.
So-
You can destroy an individual's income. I don't necessarily care so much about that. I much more care about the idea itself, right?
Prime,
Because I
Prime
Okay,
doesn't
but-
advocate
but the problem
deplatforming
is-
ideas because he knows that ideas are bulletproof. Okay.
Yeah. First of all, it would be wonderful if we had more right wing and libertarian ideas
Okay.
out there. But no, like certain ideas, right, coalesce around individuals, right? Right. Deplatforming Alex Jones, for example. Here's a bone to the left, right? Not a lot of conversation after you deplatform Alex Jones about the Sandy Hook shooting being a hoax, right? But what you have done is moved you've moved a large group of people that have those conversations off of a platform. So even though you say, well, you haven't deplatformed an idea, you've deplatformed an individual, but there's a parasocial relationship between members that really follow an individual. And often that is linked specifically to conversation about ideas that then goes off platform.
So we don't
Yeah, like,
really have
in-
any way of. Well, you haven't spoken in a while, Doobie. Why don't you go ahead?
I was gonna say that in deplatforming that person, you're actually reinforcing the strength of the idea. Right? You're actually convincing people further that hey, them one could shut this down, one him off these platforms.
Speaking
because
truth.
He's exactly. He must be speaking truth. But worse, he's speaking a truth that the elite don't want us to know about. Right. So I need to follow him to those other platforms where there is no pushback, where it's the intensity of the message is going to be much more extreme. Right. And they go further down this rabbit hole. These things don't just disappear.
No.
Yeah, the way I see
among true believers, absolutely, yeah. But like for most people, I don't. Maybe it's just my intuition. But I feel like for most people, that's not necessarily how they operate. Like, they got shut down. It must be because they know the truth. Or it's like, okay, you made a TOS violation, and that's why it got tossed off. I don't. Like there are some individuals who might think of this as some sort of confirmation, and I think other individuals who can look at it critically and think, okay, these two things are separate. The validity of its claims could be different from even you can be speaking absolute truth and still do get a TOS violation and be tossed off. So I don't.
Yeah, but the extreme actions happen at the end of the distribution, right? Like your mass shooter is a true believer. Right. And those are the individuals you don't want de-radicalized on a platform. Right. Like,
so this is,
you see what I'm saying? It only takes one to shoot 100 fucking people at a shopping mall.
This is my observation from firsthand experience operating in some of these spaces and communities. And, take that as you will. But from what I have seen, what the deplatforming does. So okay, so you've got people who get deplatformed, but then you also have the intolerance of those people's communities and ideas, which causes them to also be sheared off from the mainstream and from other communities, from broader communities. And that sort of creates a little bit more of an issue where you have a lot of people who get kind of, they go off into these darker corners where their thought leaders are, where they've been cordoned off from society, and they become much more entrenched in that, whatever that person's ideology is. And you see them losing their tether to a broader, healthier community that has a broader range of healthier ideas and a mix of ideas, and they become much more radicalized. So this is something I've observed with like Cozy TV, where it's become this hotbed of radicalization. Whereas before you had a lot of the groypers who were actually quite a bit more moderate and still had were being influenced by broader society that they had access to and interacted with. And then Nick Fuentes gets thrown into the dark recesses, and his audience goes with him, and then they stop associating with anybody. He tells them they're the enemy. Look at what they're doing. They're trying to silence us. I clearly am saying things that they don't want to hear because they're afraid of it, right? And then they become more and more radicalized and start paying more and more attention to just Nick Fuentes and his various lieutenants and capos.
A lot of these groups want to be isolated. They self-isolate. They know that there is power to that, right? And we're doing them a favor in many cases.
And in addition to that, there's another problem. There's what I call the walled garden effect, where we pretend that everything's nice and cozy, so to speak, reference to Cozy TV. And we pretend that, we don't have a problem because we got rid of the problem element, but the problem element is just outside the garden walls, and we're not paying attention to it. And then it grows unchecked, and it preys on every other disenfranchised person who's in the walls, who gets kind of shoved to the corners because maybe they don't have the right kind of ideas, or maybe they're asking questions that most people would consider to be taboo. And so as they get kind of reamed by people and ostracized, they are pushed to the fringes of that garden, and those who are just outside the other side of the wall pull them the rest of the way through.
It's Demolition Man.
Their ranks.
It's Demolition Man, right? Like the perfect city. Perfect
great
city, technocracy, everyone's super nice above the surface, except for all of the people that have been kicked beneath the surface. And eventually, you kick enough people beneath the surface, they start bubbling up.
There was a reason
they will look
when I
to
was
find
younger.
ways. Well, the other problem to continue this, I'll wrap it real quick. But the problem is we become blind to the threat, and we have no idea that it's going on. And what they're trying to do and what they want to do, which this has happened with Nick Fuentes and AFPAC, is they're trying to find ways to tailor their message and get it into people in mainstream politics, to have them carry their ideas forward into actual national and local politics. And it has happened at times because we're not paying attention to it. There have been AFPAC politicians at the national level. So this is something that we don't pay attention to. We pretend it's not an issue, and we're not prepared for it, and we could become blind to the threat.
I disagree with you on that point, but I gotta get to Corey. Sure. He's been trying to jump in for a while. If you, Chris, you have anything, then I do want to address what Zillion said, but go ahead, Corey.
My point's, I guess, a little bit far back, but just to sort of address what I guess Wick and maybe Zonia was alluding to just now, in terms of yes, there appears to be some mixed research showing maybe the effectiveness or not of deplatforming, at least based off of what I've seen. And totally, Wick, there does appear to be an echo chamber, potentially echo chamber effect. But also at the same time, this movement towards deplatforming is not coming out of nowhere, as in this largely, I think, right-wing movement came from somewhere pre-deplatforming, and this deplatforming or quote-unquote censorship is coming as a response to this growing movement. It's not like the deplatforming caused it. I'm open to the question of whether it's making it worse, but it didn't come from nowhere. And I think that needs to be taken seriously. And this deplatforming, like I said, it appears to be a response to something, and there might be a testament to its effect.
Well, this is kind of what I actually I kind of recognized a paradox in this recently. that the problem is if you advocate for platforming these people who have been deplatformed, inevitably what happens is their ideas are seen as detestable by the broader society. And what happens, broader society says, we don't like that. We don't want those people, get rid of them, and we deplatform them. So it's like a paradox, right? Platform them, we see it, we see how ugly it is, they get deplatformed. Platform them again, we see it, it's ugly, we deplatform them. And so it's kind of like, how do you even solve that? I've asked myself this question recently, like, what do you do about that? Inevitably, society, its collective wisdom, so to speak, is going to come together and say, detestable, get rid of it, right? So are we, when we argue for, for getting people, for not deplatforming people, are we circumventing society's collective wisdom, or are we just feeding into a paradox? I don't know. It's a weird one.
Corey, do you have anything else to say?
Well, yeah. So again, I'm a little bit on the fence in terms of explicitly deplatforming. I tend to lean towards some effectiveness, but to maybe use maybe a more concrete example, and maybe we'll find out in whatever the next presidential election, 2024, of a lot of whatever online forums dedicated to Donald Trump have been pretty much taken online or driven more underground. I'm curious how much the Trump movement has grown or not grown, or has since grown since 2020. I hope to find out that it has worked, and that Trump, if he chooses to run, will be ineffective in 2024. But that, I guess, remains to be seen.
Oh, did you really just say that? Did you really just say yeah, there's problems with echo chambers and possible radicalization, but hopefully we can swing elections in our favor by deplatforming people, and that won't cause issues or.
I don't think I said that. I don't think I said that at all, Scott. Did anybody hear that?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
So you're saying hopefully it works? Did you not say that hopefully we see an effect?
I don't know. I don't.
Maybe try steel womaning his position.
Steel womaning. So what is I'm sorry, no, you just advocated that you would see the effect of it.
Yeah, I said I think I explicitly said I'm on the fence about deplatforming. I tend to lean towards maybe it's effective.
Okay, so I won't allude to what you're hinting at and simply ask you outright. Do you think it would be a good thing if deplatforming led to less votes in that regard?
Can you repeat? Can you repeat that? Do I think deplatforming?
Let's say Donald Wynn and off of Reddit and getting rid of him off of Twitter, that it would lead to election outcomes that were different. Do you think that would be positive if it made it more likely for DNC candidates to win?
I'm not. So I don't think I tied it to votes in terms of just their influence.
You said we'll see the results of the next election.
Yeah, if you want to. So yes, if you want to associate it in that sense, yes. But I don't think I ever explicitly said that that is a good thing.
What do you mean?
What I want.
So
no.
But if you're talking about
so
the
you think
results
it's a
of the
good
next
thing
election,
if that
are you
happens?
talking about votes?
Yeah, in terms of we might see hints of an effect of deplatforming as a result of this is sort of a real-time experiment potentially.
And you don't think that's fucking terrifying? That we utilize deplatforming and see that as a means of fixing, or let's say, let's quote Time Magazine, fortifying our elections.
No, I'm not saying that whatever, if he enters the race, that he shouldn't be in debates or be put on media. I'm explicitly talking about Twitter has the right to remove him. Other other hosting sites like Cloudflare have the right to take down his site. I'm not saying that they should just be forced into obsolescence. I'm just more explicitly talking about Twitter has the right to remove or ban more or less whoever they want, and we'll see if there's an effect of that. Not removing them from all media or removing them from visible history.
Right. So you're on the fence, presumably, about whether or not elections can be influenced by deplatforming.
Yes, I am on the fence about that.
You don't see that
that's
as an
fucked up.
issue? Okay, let me try.
No, I don't know whether or not Twitter actually influences elections.
It's not the problem.
I hope to God it doesn't, because as soon as whatever group takes power decides that this is actually effective, you're that group is going to remain in power for a long, long time. And so it's one of those things where, like, one of the reasons I know deplatforming doesn't work is because historically it just never has. We look at the things like the Spanish Inquisition, right? And they tried to keep any kind of atheistic or heretical thought out. And yeah, there were violence. Wars were fought hundreds of years. They may have delayed it for a long time, but eventually, like, the truth gets out. Like, look, there's a reason when I was growing up that many of my youth leaders and my religious leaders told me, do not associate with anyone outside of our religious beliefs, because they knew that if I did, I was much more likely to lose my religious beliefs and be influenced by the outside world. One of the things we do when we deplatform an idea, right, or an individual and their audience goes with them, is we lose any ability to meaningfully influence their audience. And I think we can't just throw people away like that. We have to keep trying. And our ideas are stronger than theirs, game. They just are.
Okay. You, Chris.
Yeah, Prime, I think you were hitting on something really interesting when you mentioned like the true believer thing. I think that's really like the crux of what we're fighting about with the research that we have, right? It seems, as Corey said, it seems mixed at this point. One of the questions is who really ends up becoming radicalized when these ideas get pushed out of mainstream spaces, or who ends up being attracted to them. It overlaps significantly with just general research and conversations around conspiracy theories as well, because the kind of person who's attracted specifically to a deplatformed idea that they were not attracted to before is similar to the kind of person who is attracted to conspiratorial thinking in general, which is like they're kind of person who's more likely to believe in what researchers call like Manichaean narratives about the world. There's a good versus evil struggle, and the evil forces have won and pushed the good ideas into the dark. They're really fond of this idea that they've come across some sort of like Gnostic secret that's being like, you know, repressed, but it's the real truth. You know, there's a significant overlap there. But like the question, as Corey and everybody else has been hinting at, is really like, to what extent, what's the trade-off really? Like, what's the trade-off of some people are going to become more radicalized? Yes, but fewer people are maybe going to hear this. There aren't as many of those people as there are people who might come across it if it's a happy-go-lucky up for game view in the YouTube comment section. And I don't think any of us really know the answer to that. I think that what Scott and other people are getting at, and what the broader like architecture of how we run internet communities question is how far are we comfortable with this going? How far are we comfortable with ideas being labeled, idea non grata or whatever, and punted to the dark web or whatever? Like when do we start getting uncomfortable collectively? And I don't know how we answer that question in advance. We sort of tackle it as it comes. So in this case, again, we found something where most of us agree, a bunch of bad people, maybe not the worst thing in the world if this place doesn't exist, but maybe sets bad precedent. And then we're going to start parsing other cases like, Parler and like Trump and like, even getting more edgy, like Nick Fuentes kind of stuff. Like, then we're going to start having more fights. And I don't know if any of us can answer these questions in advance. We just have to like argue about them as they come, and then the platforms decide what they're going to do, and maybe we're going to deal with really terrible consequences down the road. But yeah, I just like, I don't know if we were making any progress or if we're just kind of running in circles at this point.
Good way to make progress is just for everybody to stop having kids.
Oh, dude.
The fuck?
If you believe in systemic racism, right? If you believe in this institutional discrimination that happens, we know that censorship hits minority creators harder than it does white creators.
True.
I am not in danger of being censored in the same way that a minority creator was.
Yes, you
can
are.
see this with YouTube. With the YouTube controversy very recently, right? Where they shadow banned, or I'm not sure what
LGBTQ people.
LGBTQ black creator was shadow banned. Like his videos were demonetized, where white creators with the same exact content were not. Like, why would we give more power to the people we know are going to just systemically discriminate against your groups? I don't
want to step on that stupid landmine.
Wait, hold on. So I think you got to just acknowledge the reality that in these spaces, especially, non-white people do have privilege, right? There is privilege here. You guys are treated with kid gloves, obviously, right? So to say, hey, it's going to affect POC or whatever, even if that were the case, and it's not true. It's just not true. Why would that matter at all? Like in your calculation here.
Are you
Right? So
saying?
if it were the case that they were being equally discriminatory, right, or equally targeting
No.
these groups, like would that make it like less
But I am
bad?
making the assertion that they are being targeted, and I'm pointing to specific
they're not.
examples where like the YouTube creator recently who had the exact same content as the white creators, but his videos were demonetized where theirs were not. This happens. and
We
it
can find
continues
plenty of
to happen.
examples
something that came
of
up a couple years
white
ago.
Twitch streamers being banned for things that black people on Twitch do all the fucking time.
Well, this was a
Yeah.
big
What are you talking about?
controversy
Thing
with
happens.
YouTube just a couple years ago, where because of the way that they were restricting, they were demonetizing and not promoting certain keywords like gay and homo or homosexual and a number of other things, that they ended up inadvertently penalizing specifically gay, like content made by gay creators, especially where they were talking about issues that gay men face.
I'm
and
not sure
such.
how inadvertent it
And-
was because they were made aware of that.
Yeah, well, they were made
I
aware
just think-
of it, but
I
it
just
took them
think
a while
it's-
to act on it. But they did say that it was a mistake due to the way that they were filtering based on that language, and they weren't trying to specifically target
Yeah.
LGBT creators. But
Sure, I need to address this thing that was put out there, talking about people of color being the targets. But the same people that you don't want to deplatform, you're saying that should be allowed to just be on these platforms and say whatever. Let's take Twitter for example, right? Twitter is a hotbed of harassment. So much so that a lot of people of color simply aren't there anymore. Right? People of color and people of the usual targets for that sort of harassment, like a lot of them self deplatform because they have to, because of the onslaught of hate that is directed to them. And so when we're talking about what should be done about that kind of harassment, where they'll have campaigns that they'll spin up against these individuals and make their lives miserable. Some people can handle it, other people can't. I remember a professor who she had her own TV show, and she was on Twitter. She loved being on Twitter. She loved doing it, but the amount of hate that she got just forced her off. It forced her off the internet, and she was a black woman. It happens to a lot of other black women who go on there. So, in that case, what should we do with these abusers? Should they just be allowed for their First Amendment rights? So they should be allowed to simply harass endlessly?
I
Yeah.
say we
So
abuse them
what I
back.
want to say here is
Wait,
that,
hold on, sorry. Wait, I was just with the one second, because Wick is the one I was talking.
Sure. Well,
Okay.
the problem is I think that when it comes to things like Twitter, having a block button is super useful, and I acknowledge that that's not sufficient sometimes. But one of the things that they do, these hate campaigns and harassment campaigns, is they specifically false flag. They specifically engage and use these tools of censorship that are designed ostensibly to protect these people against these people. And this is one of the reasons that censorship and all these things hurt these people more, is because of those people, those harassers. Instead of harassing verbally, right, they're now using the systemic infrastructure that's been put in place to protect these people against these people, and it works.
So what I want to say, I just want to say real quick that look, we could talk about who has it worse, right? We could talk about individuals on YouTube that are minorities and what research shows that. I could bring up the Black Voices Fund and say that systemically Black people are literally given more opportunities by YouTube via the contracts that they write. We could do the same thing on Twitch and words, or APAC month or LGBT, Pride month, and specific advantages given. Or we could talk about conservative censorship. The problem that I see with that level of analysis is that what we end up doing is we end up playing a tug of war of who should silence who, instead of recognizing that a block button does exist, and that there are laws about harassment and repeated harassment, and that you can block individuals. And yeah, I'm friends with Amy Ham, who got massively boosted when Keffals like organized against her, and she ended up shutting down her, ended up shutting down her Twitter because like thousands of people were coming after her and saying horrible things, right? Because she said that she was proud to be a TERF, right? Like we could play this tug of war game instead of paying attention to the fact that we should value free speech as a society. And even more, we should be afraid of things like when the government starts pressuring social media companies, such as Mark Zuckerberg hinting at the fact that government institutions wanted them to beware of Russian stories and the Hunter Biden laptop. And, you start realizing that, like, if you start playing this game of who has it worse in terms of censorship and who do we need to protect more, we're getting away from the fundamentals of like what protects us as a society. And that's the First and Second Amendment. Even though I'm not a big fan of the Constitution, those two things are what protects us, our freedom of speech and our guns to back that up.
So going back to the YouTube thing and the certain words being kind of flagged, right? I wonder if we might be able to distinguish between the sort of problems with auto mod algorithms and the sort of thing that we're really talking about here, which is public backlash against a site or an idea or a person or a set of people that leads to a particular outcry in favor of banning them or from a service that they would not have been banned from before, right? So like what happens with algorithmic bias, I think there's like good research on that, but what happens in these cases is closer to what we were talking about in our first topic, which is a sort of like arbitrary exercise of power, where ordinarily this is just kicking around and it's fine, but people think it's bad, and so they clamor for some sort of intervention from on high to ban this idea or this person or this set of people when it wouldn't have been otherwise. So I wonder if we want to like separate those a little bit in this conversation when we're talking about like deplatforming, especially from like web services. But
I don't know if you can separate those simply because people have used these algorithmic kind of facts of the matter and how these things work to, again, either reinforce what makes them money. And gang, because we live in a capitalist society, all these incentive structures that these companies have are going to be tailored to presenting themselves or presenting the face of their company in a way that is going to make them the most money, right?
Well,
and the
let me see if I can like disaggregate some things, right? So on the one hand, we might have a system which is closer to what Facebook does, where you have tons of moderators sifting through piles of content and making decisions pretty regularly about which content stays, which content goes. You can also have what Twitter does, which is having largely automated moderation of your content. And that can feel relatively arbitrary. You can lodge some complaints. It might take some, knowing somebody, yada, yada, right? But then what we have in this other case that we're talking about is something different from both of those, where you've got like moderators generally sifting through content, making a decision that you can appeal, where you've got an algorithm seems to be catching the same stuff, suppressing the same content. Maybe you can ask them to tweak it, train it with new data, whatever. Over here, what we have is something that's passed both of those checks, but we still think is bad, and we want somebody from on high to say, tamp that down, kick it off, we don't want it anymore. I think we might have to have like somewhat separate conversations about those things.
Yeah, we would have to separate those things and address them individually. You can't like
it's not like any of those can't be used to suppress ideas in the way that you find problematic, Wick. It's just that like when it comes to like a top-down exercise of power in a particular unique case, we're dealing with something that is in a way unique from the other circumstances that we're talking about.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes down, which one would you like me to address first?
Well, I guess just like in the context of the conversation, it's the top-down one that we're thinking about, right? Where like something has been existing for a long time, in this case on not just a platform, but on a web service that's hosting a platform. And people are saying it's gotten to the point where your normal TOS and however you're enforcing it is not adequate. You need to do something extra special now to kick it off in a way that you clearly aren't doing on an ordinary day-to-day basis.
I understand. When it comes to like these public pressure campaigns, right? I don't think we can ever stop them from happening, but we need as a kind of culture, right, to get companies to have a little bit more backbone when it comes to these things, because I don't know if you guys recall the boycott against JCPenney's because their spokesperson was Ellen DeGeneres, right? This was a huge public pressure campaign that they tried to use these same levers that we are trying to use now when it comes to people we don't like. What I am saying is that there is a danger to pointing out to utilizing these levers, because they could be used against us as well. Because this was said in my chat, and I want to push back against it. I'm not defending Kiwi Farms, and by any way, shape, or means. Like, I think that, again, a line was crossed that even I was okay with them being taken down. And again, assuming everyone was being honest when they said that there was an imminent threat to human life in an immediate emergency, then yes, absolutely take that off. I am not a free speech absolutist, but I am very close. Because when we use these social pressure systems, when we normalize their use, it's inevitably going to have a huge backlash against the most the groups with the least power. And as it turns out, gang, in the world, the groups with the least power are the minorities, the LGBTQ community, socialists, etc. And so why are we using this?
Socialists are a marginalized group now? Is that what we're saying?
Historically, they have been targeted by the U.S. government in a way that other groups have not been.
It's so funny to say all those and then throw in.
Especially here on Twitch. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like there's like 5 right wingers, and like I get wrapped up with them as a libertarian. Yeah.
And also, Eucharist, in part of your equation of like the Facebook mods, you're also leaving out the potential traumatization of all those like real people.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to leave that out. I think that's like, it's terrible. Like, it's why we should ban social media. Anyway,
I don't disagree with that.
Everybody would be so much
like, no, that's terrible. Like,
everybody would be so much mental health would
smash the machines.
By leagues.
Okay?
No, I get it. I get it.
So stupid.
People would be healthy.
Don't be a Luddite.
We have to let them. We have to let people the freedom to be unhealthy.
The internet.
I echo Kurt Vonnegut. I've been called a Luddite, and I'm proud of it, because a Luddite is somebody who hates newfangled contraptions, which have ruined everything. So.
Wow, look at all those destroyed trees behind
as you speak into your microphone.
Oh my gosh, like, you're contributing to the
social media.
Luddite, okay?
Social media and the internet has given so much fucking power to people. Right, away from government,
given voices to people,
and away from like large corporate entities and things.
Tactical nukes gave so much power to people. I think we should distribute them evenly.
Well, if you know what, if I could own a tactical nuke, I'd have that fucking power. You sure that you don't want a top-down theocracy like you were totally not advocating for earlier in the stream? Mr. Ban all social media.
My Luddite jokes are jokes. I'm not saying ban it. I'm saying smash it. Okay, that's different. I did say ban it. I'm again memes.
Like, there's people unironically in Prime's chat arguing right now that, oh, look, we banned all the bad guys from these spaces, so there's much less of it in the world now. And I laugh at these people. Right, the Southern Poverty Law Center disagrees with you. Like, every metric we have shows an uptick in hate crimes, an uptick in anti-Semitism, an uptick in racism, and all these things. Like, but you think, right? You think it's going less because you see it less. And as Zonia mentioned earlier, it's this walled garden effect, and it's crazy to me.
Well, no, they've just sanctioned a certain form of racism.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. They've learned to tailor their message to slide it under the radar in many cases.
No, it's not under the radar. It's overt. Like, you're allowed to be racist against white people.
I'm just like a totally sideline question, but something that I've been thinking about for a while. So, Wick just said there's an uptick in hate crimes, an uptick in racism, then an uptick in anti-Semitism, as if this was like a different thing. And so why do you think it is we separate out like specifically Jew-targeted hate crimes or hate speech or whatever the fuck, whereas everything else falls under the umbrella of racism?
Because Doobie is proposing what could be called a Jewish question.
I'm just wondering why we do that. Like, why isn't that just racism?
I do it because everyone else does it, and that's just the common way it's done. I don't have a answer for you. So
Yeah, I just think we should stop doing
because
that.
the left defines things not
Well,
by
well,
because the
part
left
of
is
it
using a
because it's-
framework that they're using a
because-
framework that looks at power, right?
Well,
And they don't want to. They don't want to. No, it's 100%.
It's because not
why
all
that is.
Jewish people are racially differentiated. That's part of the reason why, right?
Yeah, obviously,
So,
obviously, there's a difference
some-
between Ashkenazi Jew
they're-
and individuals
Well-
of the Jewish faith. But the
well,
reason
and it
that they're
breaks
doing
into-
so isn't. No, it's still racism. It's still bigotry. You can still call it that.
It's bigotry.
The reason they're
That's
doing
what I
that,
would
they're
say.
Yeah, the
That's
reason
the
they're doing
umbrella.
that is because of power dynamics.
Well,
It's really that simple.
there are definitely people who will do that, but the main reason why this differentiation is made is because there are different ethnicities within the Jewish population. So it's not always
That's not true.
anti-Semitism. It isn't.
Jews are an ethno-religious group. If somebody's just like
Yeah.
is like converted into Judaism,
Or sorry,
typically,
different races, right? They're don't always apply. So when you say racism, you're saying that they're differentiating somebody based on racial lines, but racial lines aren't always obvious in that case. So this is they are ethnically discriminated against and sometimes religiously discriminated against, right? So that's why
I
anti-Semitism tends to be defined separately.
no, because if a Jewish person, because Jews aren't just like a religious group, right? They're an ethno-religious group. There's an ethnicity attached to this religious group. So if they're not
but then
practicing, or they don't,
some
or
are
they're not even like
non-practicing.
Jewish, right? But they have the ethnicity.
Yeah.
They're still going to be targeted by these people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it's just racism with extra steps. Like
Do you think
it's,
that it's
well, I
there's
think
the
that's why
value,
they
just like-
differentiated those, because it isn't always by race.
Do you think
And I
there's
think that's
utility to
why it's
distinguishing
differentiated.
anti-Asian racism versus anti-black racism versus anti-white racism, if you want to?
yeah, I'm just curious as to like why you were saying there's an uptick in these things. You felt the need to specifically point out like anti-Semitism.
Because the data I'm looking at separates it that way. That's
Yeah,
all.
I think this is
Okay.
fucking
All right.
weird.
Yeah.
So we
No,
got
normally you could just say there's an uptick in bigotry and
we gotta-
bigoted attacks, right?
We got to head out. So
Sure.
my audience, we are going to continue on. We're not done the stream. The stream will still keep going. We're going to do an open walk on panel right after this. So stick around for that content. But I got to wrap up this particular panel. Okay. So I'll give this people outro. But before I do that, hit that follow button if you jumped into the panel. To the channel and you've been enjoying it, hit that follow button, make sure our notifications are on so you're not going live. We'll be on Twitter. We're on Twitter, Discord, TikTok, and YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe over on the YouTube. Help us out that way. Yeah. So we're gonna give it out.
Prime sounds exhausted.
We still have more content coming.
I don't blame him. Pretty tired myself.
Wick, thank you so much. One of our best participators. Just period. And we do enjoy you. So thank you so much for coming through.
I always appreciate the invite. Gang, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, protecting speech you don't like also protects your speech. And it may be distasteful and it may be abhorrent to protect the rights of even Nazis, right? But protecting even the most abhorrent among us protects us. We are not always going to be the ones in the moral majority. And we have to take the long term here. And the long term look at it. Thanks for having me. You can find me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty. If you like my takes, great. If you don't like my takes, come and talk to me about it. I do try my very best to give everyone an honest chance and honest feedback. And yeah. And I also have a GoFundMe if Prime will allow me to spam that in his chat a little bit. And it's not $100,000 yet, gang, but I promise I won't raise the price once we meet my goal. But
Someone
thank you.
swat him so
Right.
you can get $100,000.
I made that joke. People didn't like that joke, but it is what it is. So thanks to everyone for being here, and Corey, Eucharist, Fabian, Doobie, and Zonia. I love you all to different levels. Thank you.
Think to different levels. Okay.
Which is because I'm taller than everyone else here. That's all.
Fair enough. Makes
Oh,
sense.
wait, you're taller than me?
He's like 6'7", 6'8", or something.
I'm 6'1".
I'm 6'5", but I was just.
Oh,
kidding.
damn. Decent.
Okay. Doobie thinks you're too tall. Fabian, he doesn't. He has a sweet spot for people.
Yeah, a lot of Latinos think that.
Is it-
Yeah,
It's okay.
under 6'3" is fucking manlit.
Yeah.
Over 6'4" is glanklet. You're way too fucking tall. 6'4" is specifically the only acceptable play, which is what I am.
I don't know.
6'3".
I don't know what you're talking about. Dating websites have found that the ideal height, according to women, that they want is 6'6".
What,
Okay, well, women are stupid, so.
Hey.
It's from Bumble statistics. Yeah, when
Wow,
they had to
that's
get rid of the height filter because a majority of women were putting 6'6" and over as their height filter if they were using the height filter, and just like literally being like, okay, 99% of men, like, just go away. It was hilarious.
I think like 99.9% of men.
I was like, I was too short at 6'5" for like the average Bumble user. I was just like, Jesus
Well,
Christ.
you just say you're 6'7", and most of these people are like 5'2", so they can't tell the fucking difference.
So they can't fucking tell the difference. Exactly that. Let's go to Corey. Wow. Corey, what's your reason why we should discriminate against women?
Isn't it obvious? They're just irrational, emotional, and just men are the natural leaders.
So everything that
Clip that.
just said. All right.
Definitely my position. But yeah, always a pleasure to be here, and always grateful and pleasantly surprised by the invitation. Again, never take for granted. It's always a pleasure. Wick, a Eucharist, pleasure. Stop dodging me. But look forward to that conversation. Scott, always interesting and always a pleasure. Doobie and Zonia, also always a pleasure. I'm Corey Campbell. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, Corey Campbell84. Twitter and Instagram, literally, it's Corey Campbell.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to our special friend, Eucharist. Hey, Wick, thank you for the kind read. Much appreciated, friend. For our friend, Eucharist, who I have missed so much, and I'm glad you came on here. You did what you usually do. You weasel out my fucking questions.
I don't.
And he
weasel.
weasels out of our
I
conversation.
don't weasel.
Yeah.
I answer them well.
Okay.
This is the problem when I'm not as extreme as you want me to be, Prime. I can't be as spicy as you want me to be.
No,
because
direct. Direct is the word you're looking for.
I'll be as direct as you want me to be.
Able to
Prime. I've been
communicate
as
with
direct as I can
dum-dums.
be in the past, and I will continue to be so. But thank you for the invitation. I'm glad I was able to make it. I am going to have to hop off right away because I have a very, very early morning touching grass and all that stuff. But y'all were great to yell at, and I'm sure we'll hash more of this out in the future. So
Thank you, buddy. Bye.
See you, Chris. Good being on a panel with you again.
Deuces.
good to see you.
Nice seeing you, having you back. Can't wait to talk about MAID with him in Canada.
Maid.
Why would that?
Medical assisted or medically assisted.
Death and euthanasia.
Okay.
No,
sure,
what's
yeah.
no? It's what the hell is
It's
it?
physician-assisted suicide, but medically assisted, death, essentially.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the
Basically,
name of the acronym.
it's
sorry.
totally metal.
It's totally metal.
Medical
Okay.
assistance in death. That's what they call it in Canada. It's the number 6 leading cause of death in Canada right now.
Next,
Euthanasia.
we will go to our friend Doobie. Doobie, thank you so much, our Dark Lord and Savior. Came through thought-provoking questions there, so we do appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord, discord.gg/politics, or just Discord. What is it? It's politics.gg in your browser. Either way. We do a ton of weird shit. We have Paz from Infrared coming on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, so that'll be really fun. He was on a couple weeks ago, and we had a great time with him. Vosh is either next Saturday or the Saturday after that. I need to double check. But yeah, Vosh will be there too if you want to talk to him. And yeah, we are the best and biggest politics server on the Discord platform. Hundreds of people in the voice channels all day. It's a great time.
Okay, thank you so much. Doobie, you'll be on the open panel?
Yeah, I'll hang around for a bit.
Thank you. Yeah, let's now go to Zonia, our best friend.
The Void Lurker.
Associate. But thanks for being here, friend, as well.
Yes, I am the Kiwi Farmer Hunter. You can find me at discord.gg/politics or politics.gg. It's an amazing place where some pretty wild stuff happens. Really cool people there. You can find Doobie there. Vosh will be there as well on the weekend. We've got some fun events coming up. So yeah, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I like jumping in at the last minute to talk about this subject. It just means a lot to me. Like, this is a subject I talk about a lot. I've done a lot of research into it, and so I really wanted to be a part of it. Thank you for letting me do that. Otherwise, yeah, good to be on a panel with you guys again, by the way.
Oh, you're absolutely always welcome. You already know that, whoever you are. So thank you so much. Next, we have our friend Scott. Scott, thanks for being you, right? Being the lovable you that you always are.
I love coming on Prime Guys on Monday. You may think it's because I love debating, and part of that is true, but mostly it's because I need an extra day to figure out what the fuck happened in the world over the weekend where I was busy and not streaming. And Prime Guys is the best way for me to just, hop in and like not know what's going on whatsoever and still crush every contender over and over again. I never do research, boys. All of this, the notes and things, that's all a lie. I'm just going off the top of my head. I appreciate it though. But if you want to see a good debate, Wednesday, I will be streaming on YouTube, which I don't do very often, but I need subscribers on YouTube, Fabian Liberty. I'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll be debating T-Jump on the ethics of socialized healthcare, which should be the most nerdy, over-the-top technical philosophy debate. So I'm sure there's at least one, maybe a half a person here that'd be interested. I'm Fabian Liberty. You can find me everywhere. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate everyone here. Usually I don't appreciate Wick at all, but tonight he agreed with me, so I like him. So hey, glad to be here.
I'm worried for my numbers now, right? Like, I'm gonna lose a few followers because I dared to agree with you. It's just gonna.
It's all right. It's all right.
Scott and I agree on IP.
I put Scott's channel, his YouTube URL in the Twitch chat, so you guys, hey, check him out. Scott's been a good fan of our community.
Yeah. Hate watch.
I
just want to let you know, if you hate watch and you thumbs down my videos, that's just more clicks for the algorithm. So
that people don't seem to realize it's the same thing, right? You're actually
right. It's the same shit. YouTube doesn't care.
Yeah.
Monetize the hate.
Yeah, it's just as long as engagement. But anyway, head up Scott's channel. Scott's a great participant here, and we actually are appreciative of him and his views. Okay, so we're gonna go on to open walk on panel right after this. Anyone here can join us, and I hope a few of you do come through, right? But if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion for my community. I know they appreciate you so much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Deuces.
Bye.
Have a good one. You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.